Tonight's coverage of the Competizione Performance League World Series is brought to you by Malwa Transport, oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec. Visit their website on www.malwa-transport.ca. Good afternoon, race fans, and welcome back to TRTM for today's coverage of the Competizione Performance League World Series here in Round 5 of the Championship, live exclusively on TRTN. As always, I am Regan Clark, and you join us here in Spielberg, Austria, at a track that started its life as the Österreichring, later improved upon as the A1-ring, before being purchased by Red Bull's Dietrich Mateschitz in 2004, and over 7 years of extensive renovation would reopen in 2011 as the Red Bull Ring. Comprised of 10 turns and 2.6, that's 4.3 kilometres, 2.6 miles, I should say, of FIA Grade 1. It's the home of the Austrian Grand Prix and has been so since 1970. It's also been home of the Austrian Grand Prix on motorcycle racing since 1996, participating in 2 years in a row as the Styrian Grand Prix. Otherwise, it seeds rounds from DTM and the Ferrari Challenge Europe Series, with former endurance racing as far back as 1969 under the veil of the 4 Hours of Red Bull Ring, the last race of which was in 2021. This circuit has given us a fair few dime a dozen fantastic races across a multitude of championships we've covered here on TRTN over the last couple of years, and today ought to be no exemption here as we peel in to round 5 of the Competizione Performance League World Series. Taking a look as we now approach the midway mark of the calendar after 4 rounds that have been fantastic so far, spanning across Silverstone, Paul Ricard, Imola and Watkins Glen. We now arrive at the season midway here on April 18th in one of 3 races we've covered so far today, meaning the second of 3rd. And taking a look on board with a driver who now makes his appearance after a long hiatus away, back on board with the 3-time back-to-back race winner at Silverstone, Zalan Such, as he returns to the field in the number 45 Lexus. As we stay on board then with his return to the field with a bit of trouble out through Remus Corner at turn 3, let's get a look into the championship standings as we come into the halfway mark of the championship today. Starting things on then with the look of things in the pro standings, and getting a look here to see that Christian Lebay is in the lead with 157 points over David Tanguay in second. Such himself, despite only 3 race wins with the triple header at Silverstone at the season start and no other participated rounds, still marks third, only by 4 points away from Wright, who claimed on his first Pro Division victory in the last round just gone at Watkins Glen. Rafael Bayer rounds out the top 5 with Jonas Franke, his teammate at Black Nitro Racing, in 6th, off by a single point. Lucas Mirch in 7th place, up and ahead of Brooklyn Donkin in 8th. In 9th place, we find that of Jorge Martinez. And then in 10th place, Kyle Jenkins. Looking into the AM Division standings here and reeling away from what has been a back-to-back run of victories here for Everaldo dos Santos. Let's get a look at where he finds himself on the charter here. Richard Cecil still leads here with 173 points, up and ahead of Sergio Belda and Ivan Sanchez for the top 3. Christophe Dupois in 4th with JM Quito in 5th. Andrew Velkan in 6th place with Stephen Black in 7th. Joey Fisher makes 8th place at the moment. As we see there looking on the charts, the gaps between Quito, Veldkamp and Black really not too far apart from one another at all there. Joey Fisher in 8th, Everaldo dos Santos on 2 back-to-back victories, soars up into the top 10 there, only a single point away from Joey Fisher. He's 9th place and up the road there from Tom Barlow, who rounds out the top 10 in the AM standings. Taking a look through the last couple of race wins, we see that, of course, last round gave us Dos Santos' 2nd AM victory in a row since his entry in round 3 of the championship in Imola. And Watkins Glen also gave us a look into the first of a brand new line of wins from M. Wright, one of the mainstay drivers over at Lexus, though it appears right now today he might not be with us. Having a glance over the course of the Lexus field, we only find 2 cars here, Christophe Dupois in the AMs and Zalan Such in the Pros, so he may be without a line to play for in today's round of the championship. With the return of Such, this couldn't be worse timing for the Lexus. Nonetheless, seeing here with Zalan Such as he makes his way down through turns 9 and 10. Let's get a look into the itinerary for today's session. Much the same regulations that have prevailed over the majority of the season so far. Now in its 4th entry is the 120-minute format. And we have been made aware that there will be a server reset just as this session ends, so that there can be about a minute of a rolling start into this free practice session at the very end. You join us in the last 10 minutes, by the way, and we'll be getting into 30 minutes of qualifying and 120 minutes of racing. 2 mandatory pit stops now for fuel at a 25-second fixed window and a pit window of 90 minutes. So taking a look into the session, as we see here, the two Lexus cars side by side. The pit window will open up at the 15-minute mark of this race and will stay open for 90 minutes of racing. So that means, by that contrast, it's going to close about a quarter of an hour before the end of the race. So it's open after 15 minutes and shuts 15 minutes before the checkered flag. So much as what we've seen implemented into the GT4 Pro-Am Cup earlier on this week, actually, I should say, when we went live with them, their last round just gone, where they introduced the pit window. And it seems to be working now that the system has been a little bit more clearly explained and we have these more regular intervals. I think the first round that this was introduced for did create quite a bit of confusion amongst the drivers, but now that it's been ironed out, the system does appear to be working, and it has created some rather interesting things in the talks of strategy. It's been able to sort of cut off these very bizarre early strategies that don't really seem to go a long way for the drivers. It also emphasizes cleaner, safer driving, because the drivers don't have an escape route here. They have to play things safe for at least the first 15 minutes because there's no pit lane to run to if things get, tough for them at this time. Following on to the moment here with David Tanguay with Bentley. Before we get to the end of this session, and moreover before we get to the reset, and then we'll come back to you for one more minute of free practice, let's get into the discussion just now of the balance of performance for round 5 of the championship. And as we see here, Aston Martin's V12 Vantage with 40 kilos off, the V8 Vantage with 23, Ferrari with 20, Porsche with 17 kilos off, and Bentley with 6. And then we see here Nissan with a single kilo on, Ford and Lamborghini with 3 kilos, Mercedes with 5, McLaren with 16, and BMW with 20. So as we wait to see then, only 3 minutes left to go before we'll undergo a server reset, and then we'll come back to you in just a moment's time as per the rulings from race control. Now, the reason they do this is, I believe it's in efforts to give the session the best chances for survival. Of course, with 2 hours of racing, and you can never be too skeptical over server stability. This is their way of leveling the odds. We see then David Tanguay coming into the pits. We see also around him there several drivers in the paddock at this time. Talan Such, Ben Cheeseman, Cohen Kendi, Brooklyn Donkin, Ian Skeen, Sergio Belder, among several others. Richard Cecil then still at the lead of the AM division as we cross into the halfway mark of the championship. It has been a royal rumble here for that number 5. He's demonstrated great ability on track at the moment, and owing to the fact that he also finds himself a multiple-time race winner in this series. Half of all the available race wins currently in the AM category have been claimed by Richard Cecil. With the recent rise of Everaldo dos Santos, there could definitely be the conversation to be had in the talks of the AM Championship by the end of this season. But of course, with today and 5 more rounds left to go, 2 of which I believe are still set to pick back up on the 3x40 layout, that being at Barcelona and the Hungaroring at rounds 7 and 9. There's still plenty of point scoring opportunities left in this season, but so far so good then for Richard Cecil down in the AM category in the number 5 Porsche. See, they're stranded at the roadside down at Remus Corner. This is Ruben Pereira in the 888. I believe most drivers now just getting the last of their laps available in. We see Jonas Franke across the line there, 12th fastest, 129.167 before we get in towards qualifying just around the corner. We do have that server reset creeping up on us very quickly here. We do just quickly see, just before we get to that, is one of the new drivers on the field, and we'll discuss some of the other ones as we do have a few new drivers. This is Matt Badensky in the number 505. He's inside of that top 10 at the moment, and having a quick glance at the timing charts, finds himself division 3rd behind Dos Santos and Cecil. So this could be a curious one to follow on with. And there's also a new driver onto the field here, Cedric Grenier-Masse in the number 6 BMW. He finds himself in Division 6 at the moment, 13th overall. So keep an eye out for these two, because it will be a curious case to see how they get on here in their maiden rounds, both of which signing up for BMW in the number 6 and the number 505. Well, with about 50 seconds, we'll roughly be getting the disconnect around about now, just as we get in to the reset of the server. We'll come back to you in a moment's time when that does happen, and when we join back into the session, there'll be about a minute left to go whilst the grid forms up, and then we'll get straight into 30 minutes of qualifying here at the Red Bull Ring, where in which we'll get the track tour and get to learn a little bit more about what goes on here at the former Österreichring. Now the de facto motorsports hub of the Red Bull Group, after its extensive renovation in the 2000s. So we'll be back to you in a moment as and when this does arrive. It's any moment now, I'd say. Watching them with Badensky. The end of this session, 9th. So a hopeful sign from here as he continues his stead of 3rd place in the AM category, clearly demonstrating good pace here, and we'll be curious to see how he falls in line over the course of his first qualifying in this series. We'll catch up with him as and when we get to that point. We do see here with the start of qualifying. Now, we have been informed that it would be a case that the server is going to undergo a reset, and then we'll come back for the 30 minutes of qualifying. So we'll have to bear with us until that happens, and there you have it. We'll be back in a moment's time. So actually, as it turned out, we've been given 5 minutes as opposed to 1, so we will actually be able to get to see some drivers out onto track. And here we see with the number 113, Kyle Jenkins is first among the fray after the server reset just before qualifying today. So this is mostly going to be, in the case of the 113, somewhat of a sighting lap for the Ferrari. He makes his way out of turn 1 then at the Niki Lauda curve, up and around turn 2 on the run up to turn 3 at Remus. It'll also give us an opportunity just before the track tour to get a look at some of these corners. Remus corner here, turn 3, is going to be the site of many an attempted overtake. It's one of the most sort of densest action spots here at the Red Bull Ring, and following up from that is going to be the run down towards Schlossgold here at turn 4. 2 major overtaking opportunities back-to-back is what's helped create some of the most chaotic races we've ever covered here on TRTN. And we also got to see in our last couple of runs of things is a case where we've seen wet weather play a hand into the Red Bull Ring. Now, I don't believe we're on charts here for wet racing here in the World Series for this round. We have just got word as well, Wright is trying to he's trying to get into the lobby, so that's good. We will be seeing Wright, the last round's race winner, in the number 54. Having a look around the track, we also see here George Todd with Malwar Racing's number 12 Ferrari, who's also out on track at the moment. The 113 down to the line here to actually start a flying lap. So we may very well get onto the talks of a track tour right here and now, courtesy of Jenkins. You know, play ball as it would be. Down through turn 1 at the Niki Lauda curve on the run uphill in towards turn 2. Now you can see the alternate layouts of the track here to the left and right. That's what's used in the MotoGP Austrian Grand Prix. Down through to turn 3 then, or I suppose more relevantly up to turn 3 here at Remus as we crest the hill out past turn 3. Now running up towards turn 4. Up over the hill comes Kyle Jenkins. Down towards Schlossgold corner. Now in wet racing it was already action-packed enough. Drier racing is going to provide us with a lot more moment-to-moment action here. The cars will, of course, be faster. There will be more grip to play with, so that presents tenfold the opportunities than the last couple of rounds we've had here at the Red Bull Ring. Out through Schlossgold, round turn 5, into turn 6 at Rauch. Down through to Wörth at turn 7, up through turn 8 on the run up towards the last 2 corners here, which played quite a heavy hand in our coverage of the first wet race of Fats GT Season 10, our last visit to the Red Bull Ring. That gave us quite a bit of action down at this section here, turn 9 and 10, down at Rindt and Red Bull Mobile. Down at turn 10, you can see even in the dry conditions, it's a bit of a tough one with the sort of dip in the middle there. Down to the line goes Kyle Jenkins at 131.242, though it appeared invalid for the 113. We still got a tour of the track nonetheless, and only mere minutes before we get into the real scope of today's session over the course of qualifying here at the season midway of the World Series by Competizione Performance League, powered by Malwar Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. Down to the line goes Jonas Franke to a 129.272 with Black Nitro Racing Porsche. And to the line from behind him, the 505, Matt Badensky. to start a flying lap, as it would appear. Now, I will watch this one with great intrigue here. One of the new drivers, two of which are new to this grid, the other being Cedric Grenier-Massé in the number 6, and both of these BMWs will pique our interest over the run of this qualifying, because especially in the case of Bedensky, where we saw just before the server reset, he was third fastest by category, and now it's not particularly easy to chase for that, given how things have gone so far for Everaldo dos Santos on his recent dominant streak, and moreover how things have been going for Richard Cecil, who continues to lead here at the season midway, and has done confidently so up and ahead of Holcianos Motorsports for a quite a decent stint of this championship. 3-time race winner, of course, with Dos Santos claiming another 2. We are looking at the vast majority of race wins scooped in between 2 drivers on this grid outright. We see there sharing the same stretch of the paddock, as it would stand. In the trailing end of it there, Kyle Jenkins goes second fastest behind Jonas Franke. We'll wait really to see the real meat and potatoes of it as we get in towards qualifying. Again, sadly, without a comprehensive look of a top 10, not enough data to go off of there to give us an accurate understanding of what the top 10 is going to look like. So we come into this one once again blind, but when has that ever stopped us from having great qualifying sessions in this series? One does wonder. Down through to turn 3. Cedric Grenier-Massé to 3rd in this current grid, but of course with limited number of times set. See down to the line there, George Todd. And so begins the scope of qualifying. 30 minutes of quali then underway, and we see making their way out onto the track already a whole sleuth of cars. But first among the fray there, the 45, Zalan Such, with the points to prove today. His return to the series after a long hiatus. The 45 is back into competition and is first among the fray into this session at large. 3 wins back-to-back and 3 of the closest finishes among 2 leading drivers we've seen play in parallel on the opening round of this championship at the 3x40 at Silverstone. Zalan Such was able to best Christian Lebay on that day, albeit incredibly close fighting to every single race end of that first round's triple header. We see Wright has now joined the grid, so the 54 last round's race winner on his first ever here in the World Series will join us today to reunite a full strength Lexus lineup with that 45 in tow as well. Behind the 45 at the moment to mark the first wad of drivers onto the timing charts in this opening flurry we see is the 45, the 119 and the 413. We also see Richard Cecil not too far away. Behind him, the number 14 of Everaldo dos Santos. So we have some of the fastest pros and some of the fastest AMs in and amongst that top 5. It's going to be curious to see how it all unfolds. Out through turn 8, we could be seeing here filtering out as Lebay slows down. Franke behind him also slows down, and this gives a lot of space over to Zalan Such. He'll be the first driver to take to the flying laps here at the Red Bull Ring, so we'll stay on board. There's a bit of a bump on the exit of Red Corner, down through Red Bull Mobile. Down towards the line we go here at the Red Bull Ring. The first of the flying laps then over the course of qualifying, and on a track that is characterized by not only its sharp corners, but its abundance of straightaways. Straight line speed is the name of the game here, and I'd say even more so than that is going to be the topic of acceleration. That which the Lexus has by the bucketful here. So Zalan Such is in safe hands, still choosing to compete in the Lexus RCF. Down through to Remus, actually fully over the white lines, it's worth pointing out there, down through to turn 3. If that still classifies as valid, I'll be very confused over that one. Out through Remus up towards Schlossgold. Ruben Pereira was momentarily in his path, but moved out of the way to allow the 45 on through. About 4 seconds down the road from him at this time. You can see emerging under the Roush signs as we make our way in towards Schlossgold Corner is Christian Lebay, who continues to lead then in that pro standing. Zalan Such 3rd in the championship, despite only ever having competed in 1 round, albeit that was in the triple points opportunity that was the 3x40 at Silverstone. And I think it really does go to show how important that 3x40 system is to the championship standings, because just success in that alone has allowed Zalan Such to remain in the podium for the last 3 rounds, despite not having made an appearance until today. He's took a multi-week, multi-round sabbatical has come back into the championship and is still third. Across the line, 127.787, but it was an invalid time for him. So LeBay first onto the timing charts, a 127.8 dead. Then across the line, the 413 of Jonas Franke, about 970 thousandths off the mark. The number 5 to the line, Richard Cecil, goes third and fastest at the AMs for the time being. We see approaching the line there, Everaldo dos Santos now fastest for the AM category drivers. From behind them, the 888 to start a flying lap. That's Ruben Pereira with Porsche. Across the line comes the number 17, Brooklyn Donkin, goes 5th from behind him. Looked to have been the case there of the number, having a glance, that was the number 199. Sadly, without a time in that first lap. We also see first of the times in for Didier Potvin and Karina Stinson, 6th and 7th. Number 39 nearest, that's Dupois. Dupois in between the pair of them there for 7th. Stinson down to 8th. Number 505 coming to the line, Matt Badensky. Goes third fastest for the AMs. That's 6th overall. From behind him, we see there the emergence of Sergio Belda, who now goes third fastest in the AMs and 5th overall. Closer then to Cecil and Dos Santos. And it's worth pointing out in this opening flurry of times, we still have 3 AM drivers in and amongst the overall top 5. And that really does go on a bit of a trail here when you consider the amount of pro drivers still yet to have put times on charts. So that is quick to change in a moment's time. We also see across the line not too long ago was that of Cedric Grenier-Massé, one of the new drivers to the field, up and ahead of Badensky as Zalan Such goes fastest by 275 thousandths of a second. So remarkably quick so far then by the 45. As he makes his way back down through Niki Lauda curve. 25 minutes left to go, so the opening 5 minutes have been a rather fruitful one here in the Red Bull Ring. Number 14 across the line, Dos Santos stays fastest in the AMs, yet to have budged up a position as Jonas Franke is in 3rd. Dos Santos himself now 4th with Cecil 5th. And that's down an extra position because Brooklyn Donkin's just gone 4th fastest and is only about just shy of 4/10 away from Jonas Franke to be on for a podium start. The 35 and the 199 come across the line a moment ago. That was the case for Cohen Kendi, now 13th in the session. The 35 of Didier Potvin currently marks Division 7th and 11th overall. He's only 3/10 away from Matt Badensky. We see an exchange of hand there as Sergio Belda now goes 2nd fastest off of, and I say 2nd fastest by division. That's 6th fastest in the session. But he's only off of that AM division pole by 100th of a second. So this is a really reinvigorated start to things here by Sergio Belda. Here at the season midway, the Holciano's Ford is looking on top form for qualifying. Up and ahead right now of Richard Cecil, the AM division leader with Porsche. And we see a new fastest lap, 127.420 by Zalan Such. Now, as it would have been, multiple tenths up over LeBay, but with a recent rebuttal there, the 119 scrapes it back into under a tenth of a second. It's 57 thousandths between the leading pair here, V8 against V8. For the start of this qualifying session, just some 7 minutes in to this 30-minute quali. David Tanguay now 3rd for Bentley, so it's V8 all on the podium. Jonas Franke with his flat 6. Porsche goes 4th. As it would stand, only 45 thousandths now away from Brooklyn Donkin after a newfound 5th place time there from the number 17. Everaldo dos Santos was momentarily back in the overall top 5. He falls back down to 6th, but still leads the AMs up over Belda by multiple tenths of a second. His closest current target is actually behind him, Kyle Jenkins in the 113, who's only off of Dos Santos' 6th place time to mark the back of that 3rd row in the scope here of 65 thousandths of a second. Nearest to the line, number 26. So we go back on board here with JM Quito. Down through turn 10, down to the line he goes. Currently stands in at Division 7th. Now goes 6th ahead of Christophe Dupois. Looking here, number 6 nearest the line. Cedric Grenier-Massé now to 4th in the AMs. That's 10th overall. Nearest the line comes the 119. Needs 57 thousandths for pole and gets it off of Zalan Such in the opening 10 minutes there. LeBay on pole by 158 thousandths. New fastest time then from the number 119 Ford. 127.262. Number 14 nearest Dos Santos still leads this for the AMs, up and ahead of Richard Cecil, who now advances back to the front row for the AMs. He's currently 7th overall. We see a recent swap of hands there as Brooklyn Donkin moves to 4th ahead of Jonas Franke. He's now separate from David Tangwe, as it would appear, by only having a glance 72 thousandths of a second. Very close at hand between the 30 and the 17 there on that second row. Number 800 is nearest. Let's go to see on board here with Karina Stinson from 17th overall on the field. Stays there. Number 39. You see in the case here of Christophe Dupois. No advances there, but we did see one from the car behind, the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp. 17th overall in the session, and as it would appear to be the case, having a quick look through, is in division, looking here, I believe this is division 11th or 12th. No, it's 11th there for the 616. Number 30 across the line a moment ago, David Tangwe now opens the taps up closer to that front row, now within a second of the fastest time, keeping himself distant here from Brooklyn Donkin, who was previously 72 thousandths away from him in the talks for a possible third place clash. Now we see back into the fray is Jonas Franke in the number 413. Up and ahead of Brooklyn Donkin, though I imagine there's going to be some sizable rebuttal here from the number 17. We see with Donkin down through turn 9, now to turn 10. Here at the Red Bull Ring. Down across the line. Sadly, no rebuttal this time around for the number 17. As he crosses the line. The 35 nearest to the line. That'll be for Didier Potvin across the line there. Currently in Division 6th in the AM category. 119, I should say, is across the line here. 127, 262 to beat. Labay doesn't improve over his personal best, but still holds pole position for the time being. 616 and 65 and 54 coming to the line. So among several cars here, we're about to see right across the line. Across the line he goes, third fastest there. So Lexus now second and third on today's grid after the first 10 minutes of qualifying. So a hopeful re-entry here for Zalan Such, who marks second place at the moment. He'll go toe-to-toe with the latest Lexus to take race wins, that being M. Wright in the number 54. It'd be very easy to confuse these two in a vacuum. I believe that's why Zalan Such has got pink wheels on his number 45, is to help us tell him apart from Wright. Down through turn 9, heading up towards turn 10. Up in front of him there, the number 5, the number 26, and the number 12. Richard Cecil, now fastest in the AMs. George Todd goes 5th overall in the session. Across the line there, Zalan Such couldn't find the ground for pole position right away. The number 96 behind him there, that being having a glance down the field here. I think I actually read that right. Number 96, that's Casey Malles with Aston Martin. Just starting his flying lap then in the number 96, down through turn 1, up through turn 2 as we speak. Number 119, again nearest to the line. Can Labay find the grounds for an improvement over his personal best? Not on this lap. He's really pushing now to the ceiling of performance that Ford has to give him. Down through Niki Lauda curve, runs a little wide past the apex there. And it's a bit of an abrupt start. This has been where the majority of the concerns are starting to arise for drivers here over the course of this session. Is trying to nail in that first corner, because it doesn't matter if the second or third sector is looking very, very good and you've got the pace for pole position. If you can't link everything up at Niki Lauda curve, there's never going to be the grounds for improvement thereafter. We see at the moment, Labay is fastest in the session, but he can't go 1,000 faster until he can get himself up through Niki Lauda curve with no issues. And as he continues to push that forward well beyond its operative means, that is going to be an issue he continues to run into over the course of today's session. Number 12 nearest to line. Let's go and catch on board here George Todd, who recently made his way up to the top 5. Not too far off a stab of a second row start, but he runs wide there at Red Bull Mobile. So will there be the grounds for improvement as he crosses the line? Absolutely there. And I'm surprised to say it's not by 1 position, it's by 2. As up and ahead of Wright, George Todd goes 3rd. Number 17 is nearest to the line now. We see Brooklyn Donkin on the exit of Red Bull Mobile corner. Behind him, the 35 of Didier Potvin. Across the line there, Donkin stays in 7th. We'll see for Didier Potvin, who ranks in Division 6th and 14th overall, will stay there also. Number 39 nearest the line, that's from Dupois. Stays where he is. Number 199, that being Colin Kendi, stays where he is also. 1:19 coming to the line, and as we saw there for Labay, it was a troubled start to this lap, so on to another he goes, still trying to break the line here into a possible 1:26.9. Now, that's a very difficult margin to reach, but I'd say it's definitely possible given the conditions at play today. Dry conditions, optimum track, about 19 degrees Celsius here at the Red Bull Ring, so nice and solid conditions, not too hot, not too cold. We're right in the Goldilocks zone here for lap times. Maybe could afford to be a little bit warmer, but in the absence of the sun here with overcast in Spielberg, we're likely to see a few degrees off of what we realistically should have had, which I'd say is closer to about 23 on track and about 20 ambient. So as it stands at the moment, crossing in towards the halfway mark of this 30-minute qualifier here for round 5 of the Competizione Performance League World Series. It's Labay from Such from Todd in your top 3, and then to the top 5, Wright and Tanguay. Then behind them, Jonas Franke and Brooklyn Donkin to round out the main wad of Pro Series cars. We see behind, leading the AMs now, up and ahead of Dos Santos, is Richard Cecil, the current championship lead here in the AM category. Everaldo Dos Santos, who's been a breakout talent in the AM category, 2 back-to-back division wins from Imola and Watkins Glen, looks to challenge Cecil for this pole position here. He's only about 2/10 off of him, 2/10 and 3,000 actually, if we want to get specific, between the pair. He makes 9th place. Kyle Jenkins rounds out the top 10 at the moment in the 113. He's up in the pro category. Then behind him is Belda and Sanchez, 11th and 12th. We see Jenkins across the line a moment ago there, stays in 10th place. So Sergio Belda in 11th, Ivan Sanchez in 12th. Cedric Grenier-Masse in 13th place, one of the new drivers to this field, the number 6. Currently ranks in Division 5th. Didier Potvin, Division 6th and 14th overall. Matt Badensky in Division 7th. Now, I was curious to see if the 505 would break into that top 3, but right now, this has been a much more hesitant performance to start off with. When you consider there's still 15 minutes left to go in this session, I would still say to keep an eye on that 505, because if free practice was anything to go by, and when you consider those times have been in the session sort of data logs for upwards of about 4 hours, in 4 hours of practice, Badensky's been able to be 3rd fastest in category. I don't know if 7th is a real reflection of the performance he brought in through free practice. So I'll be curious to see what he does in the next 14 minutes. He's 7th for the time being, 8th in division and 16th overall is Andrew Veldkamp. 9th in division and 17th is JM Quito. 10th in division and 18th is Christophe Dupois. 11th in division and 19th is Pereira. 12th in division and 20th is Stinson. 13th and 21st is Casey Miles. And then 14th and 22nd in division here is Cohen Kendi. Ian Skeen and Ben Cheeseman, curiously enough, no time set from the 696 nor the 114. And so the conversation continues here on this charge across both categories. Both units divided by only mere tenths of a second to one another. Zalan Such and Christian Labay in Pro, and Richard Cecil and Everaldo Dos Santos in AM. Ford, Lexus, Porsche and McLaren all contesting for respective pole positions. Though I would say it's naive to not consider Ferrari as part of this equation, up in the pros at least. About 3/10 away here, George Todd, and he's shown great hustle so far. Went from 5th to 3rd, up over Wright and Tanguay. With 13 minutes still in this quali session, anything can and often will happen in this series, so I wouldn't say that this is a final verdict on where Ferrari could end up. All that we'll say is that there's certainly the potential for more positions up for grabs here. Down through turn 10 though, George Todd taking a big slide down at Red Bull Mobile corner. And it does make things rather difficult for him in talks of trying to make even the slightest of improvement up towards 2nd. Currently still held on to by Zalan Such on his return to the series. You see him currently outlapping on the track here. It's been a bit of a slow start to things, so the 45 warming his tyres up for another flurry of flying laps. 158 thousandths from the fastest time. Still currently set in by Christian Labay. Speaking of Labay, he's also out on the track at the moment, just about a corner down from the section we just saw Such at. See here for Wright, starting another flying lap and off to a raring start down through Niki Lauda curve. We'll go and catch on board if we can here with the number 54. As Wright laps the track. Claimed on his first ever Pro Division win then at the Watkins Glen International Circuit last week. See though, in this Lexus today, the way that it's been set up, very loose around the edges, and when we get into corners like turn 3 at Remus, car is stepping out and fighting Wright on his way down through to that middle sector. Might possibly see it again here down at Schlossgold. The car's been set up the way that it is because when the car's a little bit looser for the drivers, there's a bit more persuasion in getting it to corner. The only downside is that you trade off stability for more maneuverability on the car, and that's where you end up in these moments where he has to back off of the throttle and the car is pitching in way too hard for the corner, such as we saw down at turn 3. It's a much more old-fashioned style of handling, but it's one that does give the car a slightly greater degree of maneuverability. But he walks a very thin line in this trade-off. Down through turn 9, you can see exactly what I'm talking about there, because the car has a habit of wrestling you out of control. And down through turn 9, now through turn 10, especially where elevation becomes a concern, the car has a tendency to step away. So on a track that is as vertical here as the Red Bull Ring, where we're coming up and down this hill range on the outskirts of Spielberg, Austria, every single lap, this is going to prove to be a thorn in the side of the Lexus cars over the course of today's session and the race to follow. 2 hours of racing, of course, coming up around the corner, about 10 minutes away now. And over the course of the break between that and the race start, we'll be talking about some recent news from the British Touring Car Championship as the qualifying races for the first round of the 2026 series has kicked off today. As we've seen, though, over the course of that lap, trouble for Wright. Also note as well, there's been trouble for the 26 here. And I'm trying to get a glance in that JM Quito's now back into the pit lane. I believe something occurred for him down at Schlossgold. He's now back into the paddock. Also see trouble at this time for Karina Stinson, the number 800 Aston Martin. Still not clued in precisely to what's gone on there for her. Down through turn 9. Across the line there, Stinson stays in 20th in this qualifying session. 9.5 minutes left to go then in this session. Everaldo dos Santos across the line, 129.627 his last lap. Needs a 128.950 or above for sizable improvement. Still finds himself stuck in a begrudging P2 in the AMS. Now, discussing some of the closest gaps we have in this quali session, Jonas Franco and Brooklyn Donkin, one in consideration there, a gap of 0.06 of a second. Then we have Wright to Tangway, and I believe this is in the talks of a gap of, having a quick glance here, 37 thousandths of a second. That's for 4th place between Lexus and Bentley. Also having a glance around here to see an even closer, actually, sorry, not closer. I was about to say even closer gap, but that's actually up in, looking at it here, 102 thousandths. Really glancing around to see where those nearest gaps are coming from. I do believe the closest among them may very well... Oh, never mind! Have a glance there. Zalan Such between himself and Christian Lepay, 100th of a second. 10 milliseconds to be precise. Now 77 thousandths with the improvement there of 67 thousandths over his personal best. Lepay to a 127.195. We are getting closer and closer to the possible high 126 mark in this qualifying session, with just under 8 minutes left to go. The 119 leading this session away from the 45, and it seems the gap between these two and the rest of the field will only continue to grow as they push each other further and further and further. You also see here Franca and Donkin still at 600ths of a second, with Franca out on track at the moment, still looking for an appearance in that top 5 in this session. It has been quite the show of force on re-entry here for that number 45. Zalan Such back in to this championship after 3 rounds away. and is back in with both arms swinging here to challenge for pole position. I'd have it on good authority to assume that this race coming up around the corner is going to be a mighty one here at the Red Bull Ring. If the location wasn't already enough, it's level on time between Zalan Such and Christian Lebay. Have a look at that at the front of the field. That is unbelievable. 0.000 between the leading duo there. That's down to the thousandths of a second. You would need to go into the tens of thousandths to have anything quantifiable to divide these two apart. That is really topping out the current timing systems there. We have no other way of seeing just how far apart, but know that it is in the tens of thousandths in difference there. We'd have to get onto timing charts similar to what we have in IndyCar to give you a justifiable distance between the pair, because right now it's reading nil. What a sudden turn there for Lebay. All he needs find now is a single thousandth to decide that leading position. By nature of having set this time first, Lebay still clings to his pole position, but this is arguably the closest we have ever seen pole position be fought for in this series. I'd say even let alone any series we've covered here on TRTN in 2026. We're 4 months into the new year and we've had so many fantastic series come through. And I don't think any of them yet hold a candle to what we're seeing here. If this holds all the way to the end of the session, I will be absolutely flabbergasted. I think the last time we've ever seen a joint on pole was, I want to say it was back in VSR in their one of two double sprint rounds in Donington Park, I believe it was. And it was an incredible feat there. We've not seen that matched for about a year, nearly a year and a half now, across all championships until today. We have two drivers right at the upper limit of what their machines dare give them and what they dare push their machines to do. Level on time. 5 minutes left to go. Zalan Such, all he needs to find is quite literally a single thousandth of a second for pole position. The margins could not be thinner between the 45 and the 119. Meanwhile, down the rest of the field, Todd still holds on to third and Wright currently holds on to fourth. The two separate as things stand then, by looking at it here, 270 thousandths of a second. Meanwhile, it's about 600ths between Tanguay and Wright, and that's a gap that has stayed steadfast between the pair for the greater majority of this session. So we'll be curious to see what happens there in the conversation for the last of those top four positions, the last of that second row. And that also represents a stepping stone back up to a possible podium here, because George Todd is 392 thousandths away from the closest divide of the lead we've seen in this series. Bar none. You literally cannot, on these timing systems, get any closer. We'll see if it stays, though. Down to the line goes the 119. And as it does at the moment, 3 minutes, just under 4, and it's still absolutely level. The stakes are astronomically high for the 45 and the 119. The 45 slowing to a crawl after Rint corner at turn 9. Zalan Such giving himself some space here, allowing the number 26 up in front, that being JM Quito, to get some distance. The 45 rockets out of turn 10, down towards the line then to start another flying lap. He's got just over 3 minutes left to go in this session. 54 approaching the line. Here comes Wright. Can he go third fastest? He does find an improvement, so it is worth noting that there. But is slowly but surely chipping away at his chances for a podium start here. Number 12 across the line a moment ago. If I'm reading that correctly, yes, that was the number 12, George Todd. Number 39 nearest the line, so we go to see here with Christophe Dupois. Currently 37 thousandths away from Karina Stinson for control of 19th overall on this grid. As it would appear then, Skeen and Cheeseman sitting this one out. And we're reading through the penalties here for this series, and nothing would indicate that either of these two have a qualifying ban. So it does represent a very curious decision here by Skeen and Cheeseman, two very capable drivers in this series. to sit things out here at the Red Bull Ring. Perhaps there's something that they know that we don't. Meanwhile, what was dead level for times has now been opened up by the sum of 53 thousandths of a second. Labate, the new fastest, a 1:27.142. That's 3 times he's held the fastest lap in this session so far. 2 minutes left to go. Zalan down to the line. Needs just over half a tenth of a second to reclaim a chance of pole position. Down to the line he goes, and couldn't find anything in that last lap just gone, but he still has time here. Crossing the line with about 1:50 left to go means he'll be scraping it for that last lap that has 2 laps to play with. Meanwhile, we see in the wall there, you can see just off in the distance was the 26 again, JM Quito. In trouble. Ford really struggling out through turn 1. It's either been understeer or oversteer. We saw understeer from Labate. We just saw the aftermath of oversteer from Quito. Number 39 nearest. The case there of Christophe Dupois still stays tucked in behind Karina Stinson. Number 14 nearest, so Dos Santos still hunting down his chances at pole in the AMS, but Richard Seesaw has put on a grand performance so far with Porsche. McLaren on their chances to possibly claim on 3 consecutive victories in the AMS, given how much of a breakout talent Dos Santos has been since his maiden drive in Imola this season. It's going to be curious to see how this one boils down. The 1:19 starts his last flying lap here. You can see has finally nailed in Niki Lauda curve. This could be a very exciting turn to the end of this qualifying session. What has been 30 minutes, nearly some there. 29 and a half coming up on. We'll see how it all unfolds. Zalan Such to the line. As I said, he'll be scraping it for that last lap, but he's peeling in. He throws in the towel. 53 thousandths, a gap too wide, a mountain too tall here for that 45. As he peels back into the pit lane, we'll have to settle at the best of times here for second place. Number 12 is nearest to the line, so in the case of George Todd, can he find his way into the mix? He will beat the bell for one more lap on track here, still finds himself third. 445 thousandths away from the fastest time. Nearest to the line will be the number 39. Christophe Dupois down through turns 9 and 10 at Rint and Red Bull Mobile. Down to the line he goes from 20th on the field, still setting his sights there on Stinson. At the end of the session, sadly, will still tuck in behind the Aston. Number 14 nearest. Here comes Dos Santos. And across the line goes pole there for the AMS, so a sudden turnaround for Everaldo Dos Santos. The number 14, fastest in the AM category, makes the back of the 4th row overall on this grid, 8th in this session and leading the AMS into round 5 of the championship. A great performance by him then. We thought this one was wrapped up nice, neat and tidy there for Richard Cecil. A single 10th between the pair of them would say otherwise. Brooklyn Donkin across the line there for 7th in the session. Number 6 was across the line a moment ago. Labay's back into the pits, having finished the session only 53 thousandths faster than Zalan Such on his return to the series after a 3-round hiatus. That's the end of qualifying then as the rest of the times wrap up. And what a quali we've had here at the Red Bull Ring as we get on into the season midway. Brilliant, brilliant stuff there between these drivers from both categories there. Kept us on the edge of our seats every step of the way. Speaking of seats as well, if you're wondering what this sound is, chair. That's what it is. Before I get any odd questions surrounding that, we had to make that one known in the HCCL broadcast. This chair that we're using is getting really old now, and that's what's, when we lean back into it, we just creaks really hard. Like that. Well, less on the topic of chairs, more on the topic of the news before we get into looking at the grid here for round 5 of the Competizione Performance League World Series. And taking a look into said news, it comes from the British Touring Car Championship. Plato Racing and their recent signing of Dan Rowbottom have come up lucky here in Donington on the first ever race to pole system for 2026 has seen Dan Rowbottom on pole position for round 1 of the 2026 Quick Fit British Touring Car Championship in Donington Park. It's going to be an exciting series of events to unfold tomorrow in rounds 1, 2 and 3 of the British Touring Car Championship for 2026. And it'll be the brand new team on the block, Plato Racing, founded by British touring car legend Jason Plato, fielding the brand new Mercedes A35 AMG Saloon. And Dan Rowbottom will be leading that charge into the first race. It'll be very exciting. We'll have, hopefully, more news for you as things unfold throughout tomorrow. And you'll be catching up on that news if you're tuning in with us tomorrow for the NLRL Sunday League at 6:30 p.m. BST. Coming up later on today will also be the Shooting Stars Cup by Race Club UK. We go live from Brands Hatch at 8:20 BST. That's a little later on today after today's race. Taking a look then on to this grid. Having a glance then over to the session regulations just one more time here. 120 minutes of racing to follow. That's 2 hours with 2 mandatory pit stops on fixed refueling. That's according to the Discord server and the information released ahead of time for today's event. A pit window of 90 minutes. It will open up after the first 15 and close with 15 minutes left to go. Getting a look then into the grid here for round 5 of the championship and on one of the closest margins of the season. LeBay ahead of Such by 53 thousandths. LeBay on pole, then Such in second with Todd third, Wright fourth, Tanguay fifth, and Franca in sixth, Donkin in seventh. And a surprise turnaround from the AM category puts Everaldo dos Santos to pole position by a single tenth ahead of Richard Cecil in second place in division. Those two mark 8th and 9th with Kyle Jenkins in 10th. Looking down through the order then in terms of overall, 11th for Sergio Belda, 12th for Ruben Pereira, and 13th for Ivan Sanchez. Cedric Grenier-Masse in the first appearance to this series marks 14th on the grid ahead of Didier Potvin in 15th, JM Keto in 16th, and Matt Bedensky on his also first appearance to this series makes 17th. Andrew Velcab in 18th, Karina Stinson in 19th, and Christophe Dupois in 20th place. Casey Miles in 21st with Cohen Kendi in 22nd, and a curious case here from the 12th row of the grid, starting in the back, Ian Skeen and Ben Cheeseman, 23rd and 24th. It'll be curious to see how they make their way up through the AMs here, the BMW and the Lamborghini. Also, if you're tuning in with us later for the Shooting Stars Cup, it's worth noting you'll be seeing a few of the drivers that we already are familiar with here. Wright will be competing for the Americas Racing League. We saw he's one of their fastest drivers in their representation in that league. We go live from Brands Hatch later on, where we'll be seeing Wright once again clad in the blue and black of the ARL team. The minute left to go then. LeBay to lead the charge up and away from Zalan Such. I've got to say, this chair is incredibly loud. You can barely move in it. And that'll be something we look into later on in the week. But getting here with the 30-second warning. So we go on board with Christian LeBay once again from pole position in this series. Yet has gone 2 rounds without his next race win. Only picked up on his first race win at round 2 of the championship. LeBay now 2 rounds worth of race drought starting to set in on him despite leading the Pro Championship. He wants to lead these races once more. You see then with the 119. He'll pull away from the rest of the field in a moment's time here. Alongside him will be Zalan Such. Behind you can see there the Ferrari of George Todd and the number 54 of Wright. Last round's race winner in the Pro category as we peel away onto the field here at the Red Bull Ring. Now, major overtaking opportunities concerned. Of course, we mentioned it's going to be down at turns 3 and 4 primarily, but also do keep an eye out there for any runs out through turn 1. A difference in line can make the world's difference for a run up through turn 2 into turn 3, where those moves could then wrap up. It's also worth pointing out the run down through Red Bull Mobile corner and Rint corner behind it, turns 9 and 10. Line is absolutely everything through those sections, and a difference in line down at turn 10, which we've seen in a few different series to have come here to the Red Bull Ring in the last couple of months, can also make the world's difference, and that will lead to an overtaking opportunity down at Niki Lauda Curve, where normally and traditionally that would not be the case. So the obvious areas here is Remus and Schlossgold. That's no mistaking that whatsoever. I'll even say you've got a chance down at Rauch and Wörth, down at turn 6 and turn 7. See they're up over the overhead signs, the KTM logo and their sponsorship. You also have Rauch to get their own corner name down at turn 6. Sometimes also this corner here, turn 4, Schlossgold. Rauch, one of the official sponsors of the Red Bull Racing Formula 1 team as well. A lot of this very close to heart then for Red Bull. Their sort of central motorsports hub in Europe. Many an exciting event has been held here at the Red Bull Ring from Red Bull themselves and the various extravagant ways they choose to advertise. Down through turn, looking here, turn 7 into turn 8. This loops back in on itself, and this is what creates opportunities down at turn 9. Good line out of turn 8. We've seen this more in the wet where grip is of a concern, and it's easier for you to slip out through this slightly shallower right-hander here at turn 8. And that's often where we've seen things suddenly devolve into side-by-side action down at turn 9. So we begin the formation process then down through to turn 9. And heading down here through turn 10 as we line up 24 cars in all, 12 either side of which here for the midway mark, round 5 of the Competizione Performance League World Series, powered by Mauer Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. Down towards the line here at the home of the Austrian Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring here in Spielberg, Austria. Without further ado, as we roll down to the line, 12 either side of which for 24 cars in all, we're green and racing here in the Red Bull Ring. And a great start then from that front row, getting a look here for the 45, getting early initiative up over the 119 in towards turn 1. We also see following through there the number 12 as it bumps over the curbs down at turn 1. That does create a bit of a spread here as we cross out through Niki Lauda curve up through turn 2. A great start then by Zalan Such in his reintroduction to the series. 3 race wins back-to-back in Silverstone and now leads here right off the bat at the Red Bull Ring. We see here a huge spread of cars down through Remus for the first time, watching here with Sergio Belda alongside Kyle Jenkins. As he gets the leg up there over the Ferrari. We also see further down the field JM Quito and Didier Potvin. It was worth noting we also got to see damage here from the 91. As there was an incident down at the, I believe, the Niki Lauda curve at this time. We see Jonas Franke and Richard Cecil. They're joined by Wright at this time, who's fallen down the order now to the scope of 8th. He's fighting for 7th there on the inside of Richard Cecil. You can barely see that, though, from the point of view of the leading of 3 Porsches. There, Jonas Franke in 6th place. A brilliant start, though, by Zalan Such. We watch here with Richard Cecil still leading. Actually, it's worth pointing out, he'd started from 2nd, so he's actually gone into leading, I should say, here for the AMS. Everaldo dos Santos behind him now in 2nd place in division. They mark 8th and 9th on this grid, with Ruben Pereira in 3rd in the AMS with Porsche. See then from Lebey's point of view as he tucks in from 2nd place now on the field. Zalan Such with a brilliant start with Lexus. Having a glance in to see from the point of view here of Andrew Veldkamp, side-by-side action between Cedric Grenier-Massey and Kyle Jenkins. 2 divisions clashing heads there, and it's contact as we see down through turn 1. Big collision there between Cohen Kendi and JM Quito down through the Niki Lauda curve. That allows Casey Miles to sneak on through to our right-hand side there. You see the Aston Martin alongside with JM Quito down through to the run of things at Remus Corner. Cohen Kendi still sneaking his way for the inside. Will he have the grounds for it? No, being the simple answer on the exit of turn 3. Ian Skeen slowly but surely carving his way through the field. He goes for the inside here off of Andrew Veldkamp for the scope of 14th place. Very close on exit as we see from the radars there on the BMW. Actually, this is probably one of the first times that this camera angle is of its most use, as we could actually see from the left-hand side of Ian Skeen the look of that Mustang. Up and around Rauch in towards turn 7 and 8. Up in front, very close action to be seen here. Cedric Grenier-Massey in the fight for 12th place. Kyle Jenkins up in front of him as we make our way down through to turns 9 and 10. So a very lively opening couple of minutes in this race so far. We can see further up the line looks to be some battling going on for that of Jonas Franke. We'll quickly see, though, here with Matt Badensky caught in a spread of cars here. Miles, Dupois and Quito. We see side by side there between Dupois and Quito as Badensky himself goes side by side with Casey Miles. It's a huge spread of cars fielding down towards the checkered line. We see in the pit lane goes the 114 of Ben Cheeseman. Now, it's worth pointing out the pit window is not yet open, so this will not count towards his strategy. 15 minutes, so we'll have to wait until we're at an hour and 45 left to go before that pit window opens. Meanwhile, yellow flags out down here at turn 3. You can see for who that is. It's Everaldo dos Santos down at Remus. Detrimental for the man who started on division pole for the AMs. We see Karina Stinson now move up to 15th in the session, taking a look at where that concerns things overall as we tab in here to see the fight of the lead kicking off between Christian Lebay and Zalan Such up in the pro category. The two separate by 0.4 of a second and closing as they round turn 8. We'll stay on board with these two as we take a look around the rest of the field. We see Jonas Franke was fighting at that time when we just saw him in the background with Wright as things stood down through turn 9 and 10. We see here with the leading pair as it has been a disaster for Everaldo dos Santos. Turned around at Remus corner. Richard Cecil now leads up and ahead of Ruben Pereira. Sergio Belda moves to the last of the podium position. Cedric Grenier-Massé in 4th in division. So a great start for the number 6. So you see continued fighting here from Lebay and from Zalan Such. So we've got to catch on board with those two in that leading fight, on board with the leading Lexus. In his return to the series, the one driver who could routinely go toe-to-toe with Lebay at Silverstone at the opener of this season. Now fighting with him once more after 3 weeks away from the series. That's actually 4, I think, when you consider the delays. After a month out from competition in the World Series, Zalan Such is back in, leading this race and fending off his rival. Zalan Such's reappearance to this championship as well could represent a sizable threat for a championship title here for Christian Lebay. Still with half a season to play for, if Such is able to show up for the next 5 rounds, he can absolutely put pressure on the championship, leading up and ahead of Lebay, when it's worth considering that Lebay has gone, of course, 2 weeks without a race win. His last race win came out of round 2 of the championship. I believe that actually might be 3 weeks, again, when you consider the delays. So this is a very curious case we're seeing unfold here between these two. V8 versus V8 here in the Red Bull Ring. You can see the distance between the pair of them. Faster in that last lap, only by about 0.2 of a second, actually a little under 0.2 of a second was Zalan Such. You see down through Niki Lauda curve, an area that Lebay has been vigorously studying over the course of free practice and qualifying. Is an area where he's able to make sizable grounds here on the Lexus, enough to stay with him for the rise up through turn 2, in towards Remus here at turn 3 as we enter sector 2. Under the brakes is where the Mustang gets at its closest. It's worth noting, though, in the background, swiftly approaching this fight, no longer a spectator to it, is George Todd. The number 12 Ferrari is closing in on this leading duo, and we could very well find ourselves in the scope shortly of a 3-way fight for the lead. Not too far off their chances as well as also the number 30 of David Tanguay. More on that, though, in a moment. Yellow flags back out. It's for Casey Miles with Aston Martin. Let's go to catch on board here if we can with the 96 to see what the situation is looking like for him. Right now, in the case of Casey Miles, trying to locate him. Easier said than done, but he's got back up and going. We'll see what the scope of damage is concerned with. It looked like a spin out of turn 1 at Niki Lauda curve. And up through turn 2, so we'll see him crest the hill here. Looks to be superficial, if any damage whatsoever, so I think it's just been a case where he spun out in a bad spot, has had to try and rejoin the track, has had to wait his time for the rest of the field to get him by, so he's not in anyone's way when he tries to get out into the right direction. Wright versus Cecil is not one I would have considered for the race start, but hey-ho, we've got a very interesting fight coming up here for 7th between Wright and Richard Cecil, the leader of the AMs, now fighting with the trailing end of the bulk of the pro field, showing the bleeding edge between both categories here. It's also worth noting that there's been trouble for Ruben Pereira as we see Kyle Jenkins and Cedric Grenier-Massé challenging on what was, I believe, having a glance there, if we just get a look at this on the replay so that my eyes are not deceiving me, as we caught on with him, was that 3 abreast down through turn 1? It was more close to 2 abreast with a Porsche out in front, but, you know, we can hope. Cedric Grenier-Massey still chasing then Kyle Jenkins. Now, realistically, his target is going to be that 888 in front. So the 113 inconsequential to his current standing, with the 113 being a pro. And Pereira and Grenier-Massey being in the AMs. This would be a fight for the last of those podium positions, of which Pereira still holds on to after having lost second out to Sergio Belda. Richard Cecil, evidently with his hands full, still chasing down the number 54. Meanwhile, looks to be the emergence of a fight also here between 5th and 6th. Brooklyn Donkin versus Jonas Franke for the last of the top 5s. As we glance back into our leading duo, we can see it's closer than ever here for Lebay versus Such. And Todd is definitely part of this fight now. I would not count him out of it. Down through to Niki Lauda curve, looking for the more aggressive of two lines there. Has to fall back in behind. So looking to get back on board here with Zalan Such. He's got a very clear view on the two cars pursuing him for the lead of this race. Down through to Rima's corner once again we go. You can see in the background George Todd super late on the brakes to keep himself in this fight. He's only 4/10 away. He's actually closer to Lebay than Lebay is to Such at this time. This could get very interesting when you consider the very gung-ho approach to battles that George Todd has had every now and again. He's been a very direct kind of driver. Doesn't waste a lot of time trying to fake out moves. He's often a man of action, as we've seen in a few different series, including the Sunday League and the Jaguar GT3 Revival series. Down through Rauch at turn 6. It's been a very confident lead of the race so far then by Zalan Such. Lebay's not going anywhere though. He's done well to keep himself in line with what has been an indomitable stride from the start in the opening 10 minutes of racing here as we just cross over into that for Zalan Such. Getting a look at some of the other fights on the field at the moment. Kyle Jenkins caught between two AM drivers here, Pereira and Grenier-Massey. See it from George Todd's point of view, a very unique angle of things. On with the number 12. Now, would there be the possible conflict of interests of being in the same team as the car in front of you? Is that going to stop Todd's ability to pursue things to his own liking? We've seen he's a very elbows out kind of driver, plays very assertively, but isn't often aiming for collisions. But that's never a guarantee that he won't have one. So will there be extra considerations played here from that number 12? Oh, okay. Well, in front of me is one of my teammates. I do not want to try and get on his bad side. Would it be a case that that's what stops him from doing a bit more of an ambitious move in the near future? Because it really doesn't seem to be the case that he's showing any signs of going away anytime soon. Yellow flags out. It's for the 113 after a spin at turn 1. Kyle Jenkins looks to be approached there swiftly by Andrew Veldkamp and Everaldo dos Santos up through turn 2. We're back into green flag conditions here in the Red Bull Ring. Kyle Jenkins shaken up there after that move at turn 1. You can see he does have front end damage as we round turn 3. 616 to the outside, trying to hold his ground there, and that is opening doors up for Dos Santos for a possible move up towards Division 5th. After falling down through the order at the very same corner we just crossed out of. In towards turn 4 at Schlossgold, looking for the inside. Still no room found there for Veldkamp. See from behind as well, Stinson being intercepted by Didier Potvin. It could be one on discussion shortly. Looking back in with the leading trio, even closer now as we round in towards turn 1. Down through Niki Lauda curve, the Mustang peering underneath the rear wing of the Lexus as we round turn 1 for the run uphill. Both of them very good exit here, but being in the slipstream is going to do a lot of favours for Christian Lebay. That could position him for a move onto the inside, so we'll stay on board here with the leading Lexus to see this through in the battle of first place. Lebay goes for the outside. That's going to give him a more aggressive exit out of turn 3 for the rise up through the hill. Neither of them benefiting from any kind of forced induction system, so naturally aspirated versus naturally aspirated. And we've seen this as a topic of conversation before here at the Red Bull Ring, that the turbocharged cars often have a better exit from turn 3 as they have to go back up over a crest, where torque is a very useful thing to have. The two naturally aspirated V8s, joined by that turbo V6 behind from George Todd's Ferrari. Look to be a very lively bunch here on that race start. The first 15 minutes closing in on shortly from now. The pit window will be open in about 2 minutes. We have another yellow flag out. It's for Matt Badensky down at the Niki Lauda curve. That's now cleared itself out. Multiple drivers now are being caught out in this section of the track. We see also here with Christophe Dupois fighting with Didier Potvin and Karina Stinson. That's one battle to keep an eye on. We also see as well is that of Franke v Donkin as fighting continues in all strengths of the track. We see here with Lebay now on the attacking side of this fight for the lead, on board with the 119. Looking for the inside down at Nicky Lauda curve. It's ambitious, but can he make it stick? He doesn't try to go side by side, but he's trying to muscle the Lexus out of the racing line. That's what's going on here between the 119 and the 45. He's posting himself at the inside, hoping the illusion exists there for the 45 that, oh, if I don't try and swing in soon, he's going to take that line off of me. Forcing the 45 to play defensively. Meanwhile, right behind him, half a second out, is George Todd. Just waiting to see how this all plays out. He's playing things a little tactically here. Knowing he doesn't have the pace in the straightaways to keep with the Lexus and the Ford, he has to attack for the corners, and we see that demonstrated at turn 4. The Ferrari's got a lot of poke in. On the drive out, though, it's where it struggles to keep with the Ford, nor the Lexus at the front of the field. Out through Rauch. Another yellow flag, the 39, Christophe Dupois, brings the yellow flags down at Remus at this time. That's down in the crossover to sector... Oh, not Remus, sorry. That's Nicky Lauda curve. Again, with that corner, every single yellow flag near enough has come out of Nicky Lauda curve. I mean, this corner has to be cursed at this point. Down through turn 10. Equal distance then between that top 3. This is a very curious sign to behold. Fastest of the 3 in that last lap was George Todd in 3rd place. 128.192, I believe that was. Still the fastest time, though, belongs to Lebay. 127.567. We're 10 laps in here at the Red Bull Ring. And as you heard it there, the pit window's open. That'll be open for about 90 minutes. We'll close in the last quarter hour of racing here at the Red Bull Ring. So, drivers considering strategy ought to start thinking about it now. We could expect to see the first of our pit stops roll in here in about 14-ish minutes time. We'll be looking at about an hour and a half where we see some of the drivers make their moves into the pit lane. Now, it could happen from right this moment, since the pit window has now opened. But under strategy, we've seen in these 2-hour races a case where the drivers like to try and split things down here into more manageable chunks. Seeing the time since watching on with these 3, he's been able to break away from George Todd, who now drops 0.7 of a second away from the leading fight down through to turn 10. And this is as close as it's ever been. If there's going to be an overtake down at Nicky Lauda curve, this is going to be the lap for it. On the run up towards turn 1, Lebay's positioning himself for the inside, hooks back out to the racing line, to the 45, stranded centre mass of the road, out through Nicky Lauda curve, hits the brakes a little bit more, parks the bus on the apex there to keep the 119 off of his tail. It's been very clever there by Zalan Such. Great defense. He knew if he left the door open, Lebay would come marching through it in the 119 and possibly bringing the number 12 alongside with him. He goes for the inside down at Remus. At turn 3, has he left the door open, though, for that number 12? Because now we're starting to see joining the fight is the number 12 here. Properly elbows out. You can start to see from Lebay the gloves coming off for the 119. In his efforts to retake the lead. When you consider pace-wise, these two are two sides of the same coin there. 53 thousandths at the end of qualifying, and for a time, we're dead level on times. It's like looking in a mirror for that 119. Albeit, might be a bit of a funhouse mirror, considering it's got a Mustang to Lexus now. No idea how that's gone on, but you get the point. The analogy still withstands. Down through turn 10, we can see things are getting very, very close now. And I can barely watch. I mean, watching between our fingers for the run down through to turn 1. It's a frightening thing to see. These 3 drivers at the absolute apex of their ability in this race. Down through turn 1 once again here. The much better exit of Nicky Lauda curve than the last lap. Lebay now chasing up towards it. It could very well be a move up to the inside at Remus, and that's what the 45 is already aware of. On the run up towards turn 3, covering off the inside, squeezing the 119 all the way to the outside line there. Off the exit of Remus, climbing up the hill with Casey Mal's in sight. Dallin Such leads by a hair's width over Christian Lebay, using some of the slipstream off of the Aston Martin of Casey Miles to get on by in the run towards Schlossgold at turn 4. Still holds centre mass of the road and parks himself on the apex, knowing Lebay is staying to the outside line and trying to go for a much later apex to give himself much more momentum on exit for a possible overtake into the next complex of corners. This is something that Such has already been able to counter once before and has done it already again. It is absolutely dead level between these drivers. 3 different manufacturers as well, Lexus, Ford and Ferrari, all contending for that race lead. It's been a fight that has occupied our vision for so long that we need to make sure there are other fights going on at the same time. We don't want to have these 3 steal the spotlight away from the rest of the grid, but really, how could they not with a fight this grand? It is a Royal Rumble here in the Red Bull Ring. Down through to turn 1. Out of Niki Lauda curve. That 45 still holding strong here. V8 against V8 against V6. 22 cylinders in all in that podium alone. Going for the outside again here at Remus. Trying to wear him down now. That 119 knows they're trying to get himself up and side by side with Dallin Such is more than likely going to result in him failing and opening the door up to George Todd. So now he's just got to start fatigue, sort of building that fatigue onto the 45, wearing him down, making him easier to overtake by just constantly chipping away here. Meanwhile, it's worth pointing out we have the yellow flags out for the 114. Ben Cheeseman in trouble down at turn 8 as he looks to be intercepted by Matt Bedensky. Damage on the front end there of Cheeseman, so he's likely to be coming into the pit lane. Back on board with the leading duo here, down through the very same complex, out of turn 8. Up in front of them is the Mustang there, number 199, Cohen Kendi, being rapidly approached by the leading trio, down through turn 9, heading up towards turn 10. Kendi there holding the inside line, away from these 3, out through turn 10 of Red Bull Mobile. Oh, in the background there, that's George Todd. George Todd, I believe, has been turned around. What on earth has gone on for him there? Let's get a look on the replays as we stay on board with the leading fight. Wrong place, wrong time. And yes, he was turned around by Cohen Kendi. Out of turn 10, George Todd pirouettes out onto the runoff, stranded in his Ferrari. And as we rejoin there, a little bit of desync as we do so, but you can see Lebay still behind Dallin Such. These two battling every step of the way. But albeit these aren't 40-minute races they're playing against like the last time they met on track, this is a full 2-hour battle between the 119 and the 45. David Tanguay now takes up the helm of third. George Todd will be seeing red after that incident. Totally out of his control there, had the right of way and was taken out at turn 10. He's going to have stern words, not many of which I'm of liberty to say on air. Meanwhile, having a glance in with some of the other fights on today's field, Brooklyn Donkin was previously fighting with Jonas Franke, but will soon likely fight with his teammate Ian Skeen, who it's worth pointing out started at the back of this field on the 12th row and is now up on the, looking here, 3rd row. So that's remarkable when you consider the amount of distance he's had to cover, and he's done so in less than half an hour. Leave it to Ian Skeen, one of the best comeback drivers in the industry right now. Start from the back and carve his way through like a hot knife through butter. We've seen him do it before. If anyone was going to do it today, it was likely going to be him. We also saw, though, another driver that normally has a great time carving his way through the field has had anything but today. It's been a real adverse strategy today for Ben Cheeseman, who's ran into a myriad of issues with Lamborghini over the course of this race. Now, we've seen here at the Red Bull Ring, Lamborghini has been shown to have quite the Achilles heel at this circuit. Its change in verticality upsets the balance on the Huracan, and it's what's led to many an issue for multiple drivers over the last couple of years here at the Red Bull Ring. Looking back up at the front of the field, Lebay versus Such, I should say. Also to consider here, Donkin versus Skeen. This is for 5th on track. Meanwhile, into the pit lane comes Ivan Sanchez. Damage, of course, we saw earlier on the 91. He's into the pit lane. Back on board with that 119 in his continued pursuits then of Zalan Such down through turn 9. Going into the pits in front, you can see there was JM Keto in the number 26, I believe. Yes, into the pit lane he goes now from 24th on track. Up and around turn 1 in close pursuits here up through turn 2. Again covering off the inside of Zalan Such. He's left the door open though this time around. Perhaps calling LeBay's bluff that he wouldn't go for it, but he's absolutely going to go for it up the inside at Remus. Will there be contact? They're so close to one another. The 45 better exit out of Remus. That might be the first and last time Zalan Such calls Christian LeBay's bluff in this race once more, I should say. I don't think he's going to leave much up to chance now for the next hour and 35 minutes. And what has been coming up on the first half hour of racing here at round 5 of the World Series has been a fantastic one here. Red Bull Ring never ceases to amaze. Down through turn 8, up towards turn 9 and 10. These two still hammering away at the race lead here. 25 minutes in a racing so far at round 5. Only 2 rounds away now from the next 3x40, where we saw Zalan Such go 3 on the trot at Silverstone at the start of the season. Down through to turn 1 once again. Very good exit there. The 45 just having a little bit more going on under the bonnet on the run uphill through turn 2. Heading up towards turn 3 once again. We can see up in front there is Matt Badensky in the number 505. He's going to have to just quickly hop out of the way here of these two as they come barreling up through turn 3. Now up towards turn 4 as we're at the top of the track here. At the very peak of the hills above Spielberg. Well, not exactly the peak. You can see that the hill continues to go up, but the peak that we'll be getting to on this track. Definitely one of the more scenic vistas here in mainland Europe. Out through turns 7 and 8. Running up over the curbs there. That got a little sketchy for LeBay. Has dropped a little bit of time away now from Zalan Such, 0.4 of a second. As we get in towards turn 9, we can see the back end coming away there from the 45. A very curious story. Of course, we mentioned for the Lexus cars, they're going to be set up pretty loose here in this race. And he's wrestling the controls of the car. That's really only the first signs of fight back we've seen from the RCF the entire race. Out through turn 1. Meanwhile, yellow flags are now out down at turn 7 and 8 for the 96 of Casey Malles. Coming up through turn 2, still on board with this fight for the lead. We want to cut away to see some of the other fights. We just can't take our eyes off this one. In towards turn 3 we go. Once again looking for the inside, and once again a move fails to materialize. That's not going to stop LeBay from continuing this relentless assault for the lead. I think that is the going rates at the moment. It's just constant shock and awe. Never leave anything up to scratch here. Any opportunity you take, regardless of if it works or not, because it's chipping down the confidence here of Zalan Such, a driver who is so far shown to be borderline unbreakable in terms of his willpower at the lead of this race. He now moves up half a second over Christian LeBay. We have another yellow flag out at Red Bull Mobile corner. That's for, as it would appear, the 199, Cohen Kendi. Last time we saw him was involving an incident between himself and George Todd at the very same corner, where a collision washed out the number 12 to the far end of turn 10. We're back into green flag conditions as we come back down to the last 2 corners of this track. A little wobble over the curbs there. Small but telling signs of dropping confidence. And that is music to the ears there to that 119. Heading up through to turn 1. All it takes, one slip, and that move could be his. We'll keep our eyes peeled on this fight as they continue uphill, but getting a glance in with some of the other fights on this field, it's worth noting Ian Skeen backed out of his fight with Brooklyn Donkin to come into the pits earlier than his teammate. The 696 already having served his first of 2 pit stops with an hour and 31 minutes left to go. Nearest fight on the track, of course, is the one for the lead of this race right now, but it's worth noting some of the other fights that are possibly emerging around us. We also have 1.3 seconds between Skeen and Badensky. Skeen will continue to carve his way back up through the field. There's also possible considerations for Grenier Massa versus Wright as that gap continues to dwindle down between the pair of them. But in the absence of anything as immediate as this one, we're back on board with the fight between Such and Labay. And while we've been watching on board with the Ford for some time, let's go and get a look in with the defending angle of 2. On board was Alan Such at the lead of this race, out through turn 7 with the 119 clinging to him on the run up through turn 8. In the background there, the large bull statue, one of the more iconic features of this track, down through turn 9. Absolutely nothing between them in that last lap. And of the two, Such was still faster, but albeit as it stands by about 110 thousandths out of the last lap just gone over lap 19. On to lap 20. Very good exit here of Niki Lauda curve. Some 2, maybe 3 at a push car lengths there between the leading duo. Into the pit lane at the moment appears to be the 505 and the 199, so that'll be Badensky and Kendi, as it would appear. 0.7 of a second here, so is the Mustang starting to feel the effect here of its continuous assault for the lead over the Lexus? So just over half an hour into this race, let's get a look at where things stand as we'll continue to follow with the leading fight. There is also this here, just having watched earlier with the build-up to this fight, we now see descending upon that of Cedric Grenier-Massé is Wright, now moving up to 9th place. We'll quickly see if there is the room for a counter-attack here from that number 6 heading down towards Schlossgold. Definitely did put some consideration into it, but having a look back in with the leading duo as their fight starts to dissipate slightly here. They're about half a second out on the last interval, nearly 6/10 as it would stand. You can see they're about 3 car lengths from one another. Now, this is possibly the most distant it's been all race as it now drops into 0.8 of a second between Such and Labay. Such leads over Labay with Tanguay in 3rd. George Todd only about a second out here, so could be fighting shortly with his teammate to return to the podium. Brooklyn Donkin marks the back of the top 5. Richard Cecil leads in the AMS confidently so there from 6th overall on the field. Jonas Franke in 7th with Sergio Belda 2nd in division, 8th overall in this race. Wright having just seen a move up to 9th there over Cedric Grenier-Massé, who makes 10th place. Everaldo dos Santos makes 11th. Kyle Jenkins 12th. Andrew Vilkamp in 13th. Ruben Pereira in 14th. Karina Stinson 15th. Ian Skeen in 16th. Christophe Dupois in 17th. Didier Potvin in 18th. Ben Cheeseman in 19th. And Ivan Sanchez in 20th. Matt Badensky in 21st. With Casey Mounts 22nd. Jem Keto 23rd. And Colin Kendi in 24th. In terms of your top 3 by category, in the pros, it's Alan Such, Christian Labay, and David Tanguay. In the AMS, it's Richard Cecil, Sergio Belda, and Cedric Grenier-Massé. It's worth pointing out there is a potential fight for Division 3rd emerging here. It's getting closer to the newcomer to the field in that number 6. And the number 14, McLaren, is the 2-time race winner, also a newbie to the series, having entered only 2 rounds ago. Is Everaldo dos Santos. 1 in Imola, 1 in Watkins Glen. Right now is a far cry of a win here at the Red Bull Ring, but that's not to dismay him from his chances. Down through to Remus once again between our leading duo here. What has been an unrelenting war of aggression between the 119 and the 45. It originally involved the 3rd car being the number 12 of George Todd, now finding himself with his hands full in a fight for the last of those podium positions. See as well, looks to have been fighting as The 114 passes up over, I believe this is here, having a glance, is it would be JM Keto then, in that regard, to the 23rd place Mustang. Down through turn 9, in towards turn 10. Hour and 26 minutes left to go then here in the Red Bull Ring. We're still yet to see any of these front-running drivers come into the pit lane. Now, of course, when they're locked into a fight for as long as they are, they're going to stop considering strategy as part of it. That's only going to creep up on them there when things start getting flat. So long as they think there's the chance for a position advance on track, they're going to stay out. But of course, when it comes to the sort of balance of power here between these two, it is Such with the majority of it by nature of being in the lead of this race. If he comes into the pits before LeBay now has to reconstruct the first part of his strategy into countering the 45. And vice versa. If LeBay comes into the pits, there will have to be extra considerations for Zalan Such. They find themselves at somewhat of an impasse. In terms of who's got the most bargaining power of that fight, it would still, of course, be the race lead. Getting closer and closer and closer here. Looking on board with the number 45, you can see. In totally encompassing then the rear view mirror is the 119 Mustang. Near enough parked on the rear bumper as we round through turn 7 up towards turn 8 here at the Red Bull Ring. Hour and 25 minutes left to go. So if there is a time for these drivers to come into the pit lane, now would be the time. We'll see though if they choose to do that. Down through turn 9. Going into the pit lane goes Ruben Pereira. As you see there, a bit of a stutter out through turn 10. That's going to invite LeBay up into a possible lead of this race. They're side by side on the run down towards turn 1. What can Zalan Such hope to do here to fight things back to the race lead? As LeBay's to the inside at Niki Lauda curve. Zalan Such to the outside at turn 1. Falls back in behind the 119. LeBay's in the lead, but by how much longer? With the 45 in his slipstream on the run uphill, there could absolutely be grounds for a counter-attack down at Remus. The question is, how successful is it likely to be? The 45 ducks to the outside line at Remus. A little bit of contact there between himself and the 119, but holding that outside line, he boots the throttle open and up through the hill is still on the rear quarter of the Mustang. Boxed in though, unless he gets onto the brakes far earlier than LeBay. Zalan Such still holding this to the farthest reaches of turn 4, going up and around the outside. Look at how close it is there from the front quarter of LeBay's Mustang to the rear quarter of the Lexus. Any closer and the inevitable will ensue. Down through Rauch, that has been valiant defense of the lead by Zalan Such. Hats off there to the 45. We really did think that was in the bag for the 119 after that move at Niki Lauda curve. Up in front, you can see fighting between Andrew Veldkamp and Ben Cheeseman, both on separate lengths of today's race. For the race lead, though, things have continued to hot up between the 45 and the 119 as a momentary exchange saw for but a moment LeBay back into the lead. Down through turn 10. Same area where all of this started. Going into the pit lane appears to be the 119, so pulling the trigger first on that fight. That brings about a temporary end to the leading fight. Zalan Such will stay out in the lead of this race as LeBay dives for the pit lane after what has been so far a stellar outing and 37 minutes as he came into the pits there of racing beforehand. With LeBay into the pits, what's going to be the going strategy here for Todd? He stays out. Same story for Tanguay. In the time since following on with the leading fight, Todd got back up into third with the Bentley now in fourth. Richard Cecil, the leader of the AM category, dives for the pit lane in the number 5. Now, he's got to be careful about this one because it is a very sudden stop into the pits. I believe he got that one tucked in just in time there for the number 5. Here's hoping, considering this has been a really, really solid outing for him. Sergio Belda looks to stay out, so the 65 will inherit the race lead for the AMs for the time being. Wright stays out as well. Cedric Grenier-Masse on the last of the AM podium positions comes in, and Everaldo dos Santos stays out to inherit what is going to be a division second for the time being. Kyle Jenkins stays out. We'll see here for Andrew Veldkamp what the going rates are looking like for the number 616 as he makes his way up towards turn 9. Given the state of damage on his Mustang, I'd say it's likely He's coming into the pits now that the window is open, but no, elects to stay out. As a matter of fact, it'll be looking at it there. Having a glance as to who's coming into the pits, that was the 45, as it would stand. Yes, Zalan Such is in. What a surprise indeed. So soon. It's been reactionary from Such to try and keep LeBay behind him at every stop of this race. This is going to be a tough one to negotiate between the two. Tanguay stays out as Todd comes in. From behind, we see Stinson into the pit lane as well. And the number 800 Aston Martin. In the background, we see crossing down through to the start-finish line, the 505 of Matt Bedensky. Jonas Franke down through to turn 9. We'll see what his choices are looking like as he pivots into the pit lane. 413 is in. As for Belder, having taken the momentary lead of the AMs, does he find himself in the pits? Not this time. He stays out. As for Wright, same story. LeBay, having already done his, is now waiting to see where Such will emerge. We see how close he is to the exit of the pits, but he's yet to have dropped off the jacks. So with LeBay rounding turn 10 on his run down to the line, Such drops off the jacks. This is going to be too close for comfort here on the run down through to turn 1. You can see LeBay there on the racing line, but on the closer of the line to the inside here at Niki Lauda curve, he falls in behind. Zalan Such drops the lead to Christian LeBay under strategy. Of course, neither of them yet lead this race, with Tanguay and Belder still at the front of the field. But under strategy in the first half of this race, Zalan Such drops behind Christian LeBay, albeit by about 1.5 seconds. So there is absolutely room to negotiate for that lead. Right, only about 1.7 seconds off of Sergio Belder. Tanguay's into the pit lane, so too is Andrew Veldkamp and Jonas Franke, as the pits become livelier and livelier. As for Sergio Belder, as we see him down through turn 9, he's coming into the pit lane as well. The number 65 in. Having a glance in here to see some possible fighting. Now, our last interval showed 7 attempts between the Lamborghini and the Ford of Ben Cheeseman and Didier Potvin. You can see, though, now as we catch on board with them, that's anything but, as it's now 2.6 seconds, an advance of 1.9 seconds over its last interval recording. Into the pits then goes Sergio Belder and Everaldo dos Santos. So Richard Cecil essentially paved the red carpet out for his return to the lead of AM. LeBay up and ahead of Tanguay, who falls in behind Zalan Such. You can see the gap between the pair is getting slimmer and slimmer. So we are likely to see a follow-up to what has been a fantastic opening fight to this round. Wright holding his ground. We'll be seeing him later on today at Brands Hatch for the 3rd and penultimate round of the Race Club UK Shooting Stars Cup. Do thoroughly look forward to that one. That's going to be a fantastic outing at Brands Hatch, a brilliant circuit. And that'll come up at around 20 past 8 British summertime. Doing the rough maths for the Eastern Standard Time Zone, that'll be around 20 past 3. See close fighting here for Cecil v Skeen. Now, while this doesn't intercede on their grid standings when it comes to divisions, it is more a case of the overall standing. And this is something that I'm sure Richard Cecil will be thinking of throughout this time, because he's not particularly keen on losing this lead out. He doesn't really want anything to stand in his way that would oppose his ability to lead in the AM division. He's still been looking for another victory in this season. When you take a look back through the last couple of wins, he's collected already on 3 of them. But with the recent rise of Dos Santos, he's looking to return to winning form. And today could very likely be the day where last round squandered his opportunities to take another win and led to Dos Santos' 2nd in a row. This could be the one to break the curse here. We'll see, though, as continued to be pursued from behind by Ian Skeen, Richard Cecil in the number 5. Presently then watching in for the fight of 8th place between these two on the run up towards Remus. Looking for the inside is Ian Skeen, but in his efforts to try and outbrake the Porsche. Actually, that's come as quite a surprise then to see him run out wide. About saying his efforts to outbrake the Porsche, that's come up flat, but even I thought that was a bit late for the Porsche, and unsurprisingly so. It's a case there, Richard Cecil drops down behind Ian Skeen. Now, it's worth pointing out there's another fight going on at the same time, as we saw just in the beginning of that. The move for the inside down at Schlossgold between the Triple Eight here, Ruben Pereira versus Karina Stinson. Real symphony on all cylinders there as we hear flat sixes, V12s, V8s, inline sixes, and all myriad of engine types here. What a fantastic soundtrack that is. Watching here with Pereira. He comes barreling down through to turn 9 and 10. Christophe Dupois in the pit lane in front of him, so that could be a free position up for grabs here as the Lexus is in. In terms of where it positions him overall, if he moves up and ahead here of Christophe Dupois, he's going to move up into what I believe is a division, I want to say division 6th for him at this time. Meanwhile, getting a look back in here. As right now, Lebey's gone up and ahead of Wright. He still has yet to take his pit stop, either of them, as a matter of fact, in this race. So getting a look on board here with Lebey, who leads now over both Lexus cars, Wright and Such. Question there and remains, is Wright coming into the pits anytime soon? Doesn't appear to be the case. He's the kind of driver that is willing to stay out long for these kind of strategies, as we saw in Watkins Glen. Could it be the case where, like in Watkins Glen, could we expect to see in the next 14 minutes, around about the hour mark, that we see the first of those pit stops off of Wright? He's willing to go the extra mile here. That's clear to see. And even in spite of the fact that the cars around him have come in to refuel and have likely during that time also put new tyres on, doesn't really show too much of a drop in performance. He's still with the main pack of cars. And even though having lost the lead of the race there, he would have lost it anyway under strategy, it doesn't really show any noticeable signs of a significant drop-off. He's still with Lebey at this time. Meanwhile, just to note as well, yellow flag out once again at Niki Lauda curve. It was for the 114 of Ben Cheeseman. Meanwhile, just to note as well, there's been close fighting here. Everaldo dos Santos versus Cedric Grenier-Massey. BMW versus McLaren. Now, this is quite a poignant fight when you consider for Dos Santos, this is a fight for Division 3rd we're talking about, with a brand new driver onto the field, one of 2 new Beamers in this race. Perhaps we underplayed his performance, and now as we see running out through Niki Lauda curve, that's now allowed for a much easier path through to 3rd place for Dos Santos as they come barreling up through turn 2. Perhaps we underplayed then the number 6 because his times never reflected the performance he had in this race, as it was a case where in the end of free practice it was actually the other of the new Beamers, that being Matt Bedensky, that was 3rd fastest in the category alongside with Dos Santos and Cecil. But as we see, timing isn't everything, and when it comes to the capacity to actually race, I'd say we've got a much livelier package here from the number 6 as the new driver on the field. Now, that's not to underplay the performance of the 505. He has had his fair share of troubles, and anyone would have a hard time having their first race in any championship here at the Red Bull Ring, but it's quite telling here to see how well that number 6 has performed, to go side to side with another newcomer to the field, one that has took competition by storm and actually stay along with, albeit now drops in behind, but is not exactly too distant from Dos Santos. It's a fair play there to Grenier-Massey. Right now dropping away from Such, the twin Lexus cars, now 2.3 seconds from Lebey, with an hour and 12 minutes left to go. And in terms of other nearby fights, of course, is still the one for Dos Santos versus Grenier-Massey, but it's also worth pointing out Potvin v Cheeseman across 2 different divisions. We'll see, though, here. A possible move for the inside. Down at Remus. Backs out of it. Also worth noting, Skeen v Cecil. Now, they swapped hands not long ago after Cecil ran wide at turn 3. But he's not exactly lost distance there over Skeen in the time since. He's still less than a second away from the BMW, holding on to him as we go down through Sector 3. As we come up to the halfway mark of the halfway race, we will be dead on halfway through the season, I believe, coming into this round. Actually, that might actually be between both rounds. So it would be the week we have between now and round 6 will actually be where the halfway of the season comes up from, the most literal of standpoints. We see a recent move there from Veldkamp over Stinson. Karina Stinson now slots into Division 8th. That's worth pointing this out here for Stinson, that she has shown great improvement over the course of the last couple of races in this championship since her entry. Of course, we saw her make her debut to Competizione Performance League in GT4 in her time with KTM. The move to Aston Martin was certainly a bit of a head scratcher, but if we have a look here at her last couple of results, this will help paint us somewhat of a picture. In GT4, things were quite the struggle, but GT3 seems to be something of a different variety for her, because she was 7th in the last race, now 8th at the moment, and could very well fight for 7th, along with Andrew Veldkamp, because as we've seen with plenty of these fights, this has not been the kind of track where you can so easily run away with position. Apologies there, I had to look in the corner of my eye, and I just got scared the daylights out of my dog snuck up on me there. That's horrible. Trying my best not to, like, audibly react to that one, but having a look in here with a very close state of fights up the field. Kyle Jenkins versus George Todd. The twin Ferraris head-to-head here. Jenkins yet to have taken either of his pit stops. And that's the same story for another driver inside of the top 10 at the moment, as we see Ian Skeen. As, oh, what's gone on here for Skeen? I believe, oh no, have we lost Ian Skeen in this race? Yes, the 696 has been confirmed out. And that has been a real shocker there. I'm not sure what's gone on for him in the time when we were looking in with some of the other drivers. I'd be curious to know what's gone on for him there, but as we know now, the 696 is out of this race. So that's your recent shock news there. The 696 BMW of Ian Skeen is out of round 5 of the Competizione Performance League World Series. And I believe, having a glance in here, is our first DNF of this race. Meanwhile, in the fight here between Jenkins and Todd, it has now expanded out some 2.1 seconds. Nearest fights going on the track at the moment. You see here Stinson v Veldkamp, 1.4. That was previously 1.1 seconds. As now fighting starts to dissipate here as we approach the halfway mark of the race. Now, it should join back up in theory towards the end, as we saw in the same story being told out through Watkins Glen. There is still some fights to consider. Division 3rd, for example. Last of the podiums for the AMS, Everaldo dos Santos versus Cedric Grenier-Massey. Right now, though, nothing seems to really be happening at this time that's so immediate as the action we saw in the opening half hour. Now, there is a potential developing fight here. Sanchez v Stinson. This will be for division, looking here, 8th on track. We'll see here with Ivan Sanchez. Slowly but surely gaining ground there on that V12. You've seen here with the Okeanos Motorsports team. They've been quite a present sight on multiple grids throughout the last sort of year and a half, getting on now for worth of coverage here on TRT10. We saw them first in the NLRL Sunday League. We've also seen them recently in the last couple of months make their way here onto the scope of things at Competizione Performance League through both GT4 and here in the GT3s in the World Series. And they represent to us one of two rising groups here from Spain, Holkianos being one of them, the other being the Furia Iberico racing team. We've seen plenty of their drivers emerge out of seemingly for us the blue in the last couple of months. We've seen them over on Fats GT, we've seen them on TRC, and we're starting to see them in smaller capacity make their way into GT4 racing over on the GT4 Pro-Am Cup. It's been a curious case, though, to follow on with for some time here. Both of these groups, to see their development from quite an early stage as a team and see how they've come to grow. And in the case here with Sanchez, Belder, and Quito, they've been three of the drivers we've had probably the most amount of screen time with from the Holkianos group. We've seen some of their other drivers as well. I believe there was, during the console endurance series, was Javier Alonso as well. I'm sure there's plenty more drivers at the Holkianos team, but that's been sort of the main three we've had. On the way down through to turn one, Sanchez still scoping up a chance here of Division 8 over Karina Stinson. Another new driver on our radar. Heading up through to Remus, the Aston Martin's holding centre mass of the road there. That's played quite nicely into our hands because running out wide way later onto the brakes went about Sanchez, and that allowed on through his teammate Sergio Belder, who, as things stand right now, is in a very cheery position at the moment. Sergio finds himself in Division 2nd, one of the highest results for the Holkianos Motorsports group here in the AM Championship for this season. And you consider that Belder himself has picked up on a race win over the course of the season, the third of which of races at Silverstone. They've proven themselves to be more than capable in pursuing Richard Cecil for the championship. They're still very close by when you consider where they stood coming into today's round of the championship. 173 points is what Richard Cecil had to the 157 that Sergio Belder has. Now, that's a points gap roughly of about 16 points, so it's razor thin at the halfway. And with 5 more rounds left to go, 2 of which are the same triple header races, the 3x40s we had at the start of this season at Silverstone, there are still unfathomable amounts of points. I had to really take a breath in for that one. Unfathomable amounts of points potential coming up for these three at the top end of the AMs, Cecil, Belder, and Sanchez. But I would definitely keep an ear to the ground on more updates from the Brazilian talent that is Everaldo dos Santos, because he has quickly shot up through the standings here. 2 races in, already into the top 10, back-to-back race wins in division. Today may very well have not been his day. He does find himself still, though, with an unbreakable bond to the podium for the time being. If he can still finish here 3rd place in the Red Bull Ring, he will still hold on to an accolade of never having once in this season finished off of the podium of the races he's competed in. Not many can walk away with a statistic like that. Technically, that law still applies here to one other driver, Zadan Such, who has never finished outside of 1st in the races he's competed in. It's a bit of a skewed statistic when you consider that he only competed in round 1, took 3 rounds away, and has come back to us now for round 5. But, you know, running off of that very loose logic, that's technically what is the case here. 3 race wins in a row in Silverstone, all 3 of which were divided by less than a second at the checkered flag, and is close fighting with the 119. As things stand, though, approaching the halfway mark of round 5, LeBay leads over him by 3.2 seconds. So, looking to catch back on board with the fighting at this time between Sanchez and Stinson. Their continued efforts to clash here for Division 8 on the run up through turn 2. Straight line speed still actually quite a good point here for the Aston. as it is actually one of the fastest in GT3, if not the fastest. Round Remus. Oh, spinning out there goes Karina Stinson. A little too enthusiastic on the throttle. That 5.9 litre kicked her off like an angry mule. Get a look at this on the replays. Down through Remus. Just gets on the throttle a little too early. The Aston does not like being fought, as we've heard before from private conversations with LeBay, a driver who's stuck on with Aston Martin for 4 seasons over on the NLRL Sunday League. And he could tell us there that the Aston's a very involved kind of car. We can make the assumptions from other drivers having raced with the car before. We've had word off of 2 drivers from the Sunday League also to have competed with the V12 Vantage on a limited number, albeit, of occasions compared to LeBay's 4-season stint, that being Michael Rushton and Ethan Oliver, both of which told us much of the same, that the V12 Vantage is a car that really does not like to be fought. In the case here for Stinson, she's had to learn that one the hard way. We see crossing over into the hour mark. Taking a look at things at the moment then. That drops her to Division 9th. We see right into the pit lane. So as we predicted there, we said this a while back. Was it a case that Wright was going to come in when the hour mark dropped in? Yes, being the answer. So he's running a lot of the same strategy as he tried in the Watkins Glen race. But the problem we have now is, unlike the Watkins Glen race, where that was still open strategy at the time, according to the race control team and all of the data they submitted to us for the event specification, we now have a 25-second fixed refueling window. So it seems almost reactionary that race control has seen how overpowered that strategy can be on a 2-stop race and have killed it in the water. Now, I'd say it's kind of sad. I would say it is definitely kind of sad. We'll come to see, though, if that's the case. Because we said it in Watkins Glen, that strategy would go on to define the rest of the season if nothing else stepped in its way. That second part more relevant now, because that's what we're saying now. That could very well have become the new default strategy for these 2-hour races, but with the introduction of that fixed refueling window, 25 seconds, mind you, a very similar strategy we've seen employed over on the Sunday League, has now killed that opportunity in the water. And for Wright, this is the Requiem knell, because that's what gave him that cunning strategy, and that confidence behind the wheel is what gave him his first win of the season. I'd say in his situation, I'd say it's quite hard to not feel like this is somewhat of a personal thing now, because in what other way would the rules change right after a strategy like that comes through? Of course, the regulations have changed on and off every now and again over the last couple of races, the pit window being one of them. It was 70 minutes in its introduction, 80 minutes in the last round at the Watkins Glen International Circuit at round 4, and then today is 90 minutes. So it just comes up every now and again, so it appears. We've seen it also on 80 minutes over on GT4, where the races are only about an hour and a half as opposed to the 2 hours of racing we have here in the World Series. So heading down through turn 9, we see here with Wright, after his first pit stop, currently slots in to a Division 5th in the pros, but overall is 6th, tucked in behind Richard Cecil, who now mans the back of the overall top 5. We also see the last of the pit stops then for Brooklyn Donkin. Now, this is a curious case when you consider that the BMW, and we know this for certain, can do the full hour on the same tyres with the right amount of fuel, can absolutely do a full hour of racing here at Red Bull Ring. We've seen this done before, so it's going to be curious to see, where does Donkin actually find himself at Journey's End here, in the end of this race? Will he be gunning for that top 5? That's our prediction at the moment. We see as well for Wright, having re-entered the field, of course, we mentioned was in 6th, but we see close behind and looking to engage him for 6th place, Jonas Franke with Black Nitro Racing Porsche. Also in the pit lane at the moment, Casey Malles, JM Quito, and now we see here from Ivan Sanchez after his move over Karina Stinson after she spun out at turn 3, getting too early onto the throttle. What is already a very wiry Aston Martin. So let's got a catch on board here with Wright. This is going to be a curious one to watch. I see from Franca's point of view, but we want to catch on board with the defending angle of 2 here, on board with Wright. We'll follow him down through turn 9 and turn 10 here. Back on board then with the 54 up in the pro category. Currently then fighting for 6th place on track. We see a much better exit off of Jonas Franca. That does present itself an ample opportunity to go for the inside down at turn 1, risky as it is. Few cars can hope to outbrake the Porsche 911, so he's definitely got a lot more opportunities than his average GT3 drivers around him. In the case here of the Lexus, it's going to be tough for him to try and outbrake the Porsche. Up through to Remus. See that point demonstrated there. It's a bump from behind down at Remus. Right kicked out wide, but he holds onto it. And in his efforts there to try and get slowed down in time, it was just too little too late for Jonas Franca, but he held his brakes after to make sure he didn't get the position off of that of Wright. We see down through the run of things at turns 7 and 8. On the run up towards turn 9 and 10, we'll stay on board with this fight then for 6th place. We'll be back to you in just a moment. Meanwhile, actually, hang on, just as I say that, 888 in trouble. Yellow flags out on what looks to be the run between turns 3 and 4. The 888, Ruben Pereira, is into the wall here. Yellow flags are out for the wounded Porsche. See, he's got the emergency lights on there, I believe, at the moment. And there does look to be a great deal of difficulty here for that 888. That could very well, by looks of things here, be the end of Pereira's race. He's come to the side of the road here, down past Remus in towards Schlossgold. He's back into the pit lane, so we're back into green flag conditions, but it's a bitter end to things here for Pereira after what showed to be in the early stages quite a promising race in the AM category for that 888 Porsche. Was at one moment on for a podium. It's all come apart here at the Red Bull Ring. Back on board then with a fight of 6th between Wright and Franca, about a second apart from one another as they round through Rauch at turn 6. As we see now, in the latest developments of the fight between Franca and Wright. In the last lap, Wright faster by quite a decent distance there, breaking into the 128s with Franca behind in the 129s. They're 2 seconds apart as they round out through. And it looks like even more troubles then for Jonas Franca. Yellow flags out for that number 813. Let's go and catch on board with the Porsche. I believe he's come undone out through turn 1. Taking a look to try and locate that Porsche at this time. Jonas Franca, yes, you can see now with considerable front-end damage after Niki Lauda curve. It's all come undone here for the 413. As we're back into green flag conditions. Still no news yet on if Pereira will see the end of this race. It seems unlikely given his predicament before entry. Looking in for some of the nearby fights on the track. Belda versus Dos Santos, one in consideration here. Sergio Belda's confidently held onto a podium throughout today's race, but Everaldo Dos Santos, who's been a rising star in the AM category for the last 2 rounds, definitely looks to be poised to try and challenge for 2nd place. There is the possibility as well here. Brooklyn Donkin fights with Grenier Masse. Two seconds and closing between the pair. You also see here a difference in position between Didier Potvin and Matt Vidensky. About 1.2 seconds there, but it looks to be growing at this time between the pair. Looking on with Donkin. Setting his sights upon Cedric Grenier-Massey in the number 6 in front. Still third in the AMs at this time. See from Belder's point of view of things. Up in front, you can see side-by-side action between Casey Miles and Andrew Veldkamp. Those two on completely separate lengths of today's race. 1.3 seconds then the gap between Dos Santos and Belder for control of second place in the AM category. Meanwhile, looking in now, we're on board with Brooklyn Donkin, who has firmly cemented himself into a fight for 10th place against Cedric Grenier-Massey. We'll stay on board. He closes in down through turn 3 at Remus. Charging up in towards turn 6 at Ralk, looking for the inside. On the run up towards turn 7, it is dangerously close here between the number 6 and the number 17. The two BMWs side by side down through turn 7. Up through Verth, in towards turn 8. They're still side by side on exit. And as it would appear, Cedric Grenier-Massey back up into 10th place. Remarkable defense here from the newcomer to the field. Brooklyn Donkin leaps for the inside down at Rint Corner and looks to have this one tied up for the run down through Red Bull Mobile. A little bit of a wobble there on the exit. Could open the door back up for a move on the inside. You can see creeping up on him in his interior view. Now side by side on the run up towards Nicky Lauda curve. Brooklyn Donkin stays on the line, has to go around the outside at turn 1, joining back up over the curves there. Very solid exchange between the pair, between the number 17 and the number 6. The twin Beamers fighting from across 2 categories for control of that, what is now 9th place spot, I should point out, in a recent upgrade. The 114, yellow flags out for the moment. Now back into green flags. Trouble out of turn 10 there for Ben Schiessman. Down through to Schlossgold. It's worth pointing out Kyle Jenkins behind there in the 113. Short to join this fight. I believe is the reason why this upgraded to a fight for 9th over a fight for 10th between these two. Half a second between the Beamers. A great exchange there that carried out through here at turns 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Carried all the way up through turn 1. It was a brilliant little exchange we had there for control of what came to be the fight of 9th place. Brooklyn Donkin then, one of the star drivers in the last couple of months of the Euro Titans Endurance team on their ACC division. Showing off here at the Red Bull Ring with a fantastic move. Looking in for more nearby fights. Of course, it's worth getting a look in at the front of the field. You can never be too certain over whether or not things will pick up once again for Such versus LeBay. As it stands, it's 3.1 seconds. 47.5 minutes left to go in this race. Now, I do have it on good authority. We'll be seeing possibly some earlier pit stops creep in here in the next 2 minutes when we've got about 45 minutes of racing left to go. Another interval opening up in the next 17 minutes when we've got 30 minutes left to go. In terms of the pit window, it closes in 32 minutes from now. So in the last 15 minutes of racing rolls on through, the pit lane will shut. The pit window will be effectively closed out. See, emerging from the pit lane in the background is Jonas Franco in the 413. There was trouble for him, we saw earlier on in his fights in today's race. He's fighting along with the 54. Meanwhile, we see into the pit lane goes LeBay, so he's looking to play the first card in here, knowing he's got more bargaining power in terms of pit strategy against Alan Such, who stays out here onto lap 49. David Tanguay following suit. And as it appears, now don't quote me on this one because we still don't have a precise weather radar to the end of this race, only for the next 30 minutes. But That, rolling in over the distance, that looks eerily like rain. I don't think that's just mist. I think there's some substance to this. Right now, for the next 30 minutes, it's showing clouds and just a growing procession of clouds. I would not be too surprised because we do have a bit of a data window here that we aren't able to record from of about an extra 15 minutes. What if in that next 15 minutes rain appears? Because we simply won't know until it's too late, and it certainly looks like rain's rolling in from the distance here. More on that, though, as it progresses. Right now, all conditions are showing as overcast and clouds. Nothing indicative of rain besides what we're seeing yonder the horizon. Getting a look in here with another fight going on. 113 versus number 6. Cedric Grenier-Massey versus Kyle Jenkins, who himself is trying to gain some distance here up on the number 17 of Brooklyn Donkin. We see out through turn 8 on the run up towards turn 9 and 10. Also worth noting that Richard Cecil came into the pit lane not long ago, so it does leave Everaldo dos Santos in the lead, having got up and ahead here of Sergio Belda. Currently second in division. Will still, by the looks of things, be seeing another podium, so his stance at the front of the field is yet been shaken by the newcomer to the field, the Brazilian talent in the number 14, who's took competition in this category by storm. Be very curious to see what he makes of things in the what would be the prospective second season of the World Series on his possible move up to pro. So right now, 43 minutes left to go in this race. Alan Such leads over David Tangray and George Todd in third. As it stands then, LeBay fourth, but has taken the last of his pit stops. Right in fifth, with Dos Santos leading in the AMS for the time being, as Cecil, the previous AMS leader, has taken his last pit stop. So there's a lot to be changed up here in the next 43 or so minutes. Now, I'm expecting a greater majority of these pit stops to come up in the next 13 or so minutes. As we know now, with the pit window being stricter on this race, and with also the consideration here that there has been a fixed refueling window, that we'll be seeing an earlier visit to the pit stops for the last time here from Wright. Also see into the pits recently there, Andrew Veldkamp in the 616. 42 minutes left to go in this race. Presently their nearest fights going on at the moment. A little hard to come by, but looking here, possible one on the horizon, unless he comes into the pits shortly, is going to be Jenkins v Donkin. They're 1.3 seconds out from one another here in what is currently gearing up to be a fight for 8th place. Of course, when considering strategy, this will be one that is quickly distanced once the 113 comes into the pit lane, but for the time that they are still present on the same stretch of tarmac, it is worth considering here between the 113 and the 17. 1.5 seconds between the pair of them. Recently into the pit lane goes Andrew Veldkamp. Now we see him on his way out here in the 616. Alongside there, two generations of Aston Martin as Karina Stinson and Casey Miles make their way on through. Stinson in 18th, Miles in 20th. The V12 Vantage, and then its descendant, the V8 Vantage, following along there on the run up through turn 2. What an impressive sight that is. Right now, in somewhat of a quiet phase of this race as we wait for strategy to play a heavier hand in deciding positions on track at the moment. We see here in the pit lane is JM Keto and the number 26. We are now given confirmation that I believe, having a glance just quickly through here, yes, Ruben Pereira is sadly out of this race, marking our second DNF after Ian Skeen in the 696 BMW up in the Pro category. So now one from each category has sadly been has been forced out of this race effectively by DNFs. Into the pit lane goes Cedric Grenier-Massey, and he's had a very solid open, all things considered here. Enters the pits from Division 3rd, will drop down to Division 4th because Richard Cecil's back on the climb here. His strategy paying off and could very well reward him with yet another victory on his hands. His 4th by looks of things here, continuing to open the gaps up over his lead ahead of Belder. Into the pit lane goes David Tangre and Everaldo dos Santos. So big mix-up coming here from both categories. George Todd's going to move up into second place. LeBay, having taken that earlier pit stop. Still curious to see then what the response is looking like from Zalan Such at the lead of this race. LeBay is going to move up into third. For Dos Santos, it's going to be a case where Richard Cecil is going to move up here in towards Division 2nd. We see him cross down across the line there just a moment ago. That leaves Sergio Belda out by his lonesome at the lead of the AM division here in round 5. Still yet to have seen his last pit stop. So I think it is worth pointing out a lot of strategy here is going to teeter on what the next sort of 30 minutes worth of forecast is looking like. Because you can see from the wide shot there down through to Schlossgold was this considerable build-up of mist in the air. That usually is the harbinger for quite heavy rainfall not long thereafter. You can see it there. It's a really gloomy sight over the hills here in Spielberg. Getting much harder to see. The fog building up. I feel the sense that a storm is brewing. I think a lot of drivers are going to wait to see around the 30-minute mark if the next weather report shows the chance of rain at the end of this race, whether they're willing to take that chance. I think realistically, even if there is a chance of rain in that next 30-minute window, as we've seen in other races before, namely the Circuit Paul Ricard race on the 5th season of the NLRL Sunday League, where rain dropped in right at the last second. A lot of drivers will just elect to stay out if they've got the distance. We see Zalan Such and George Todd are both in, so willing to play that card. LeBay rolls down through to turn 9 and 10. It's going to be close here for Zalan Such because I'm pretty sure that fixed refueling window has had him off for that race lead. LeBay's rolling down to the line, and yet we have not seen dropping off of the jacks there, Zalan Such. Just as he does, LeBay's rolling down. You can see the Lexus there just in the background as the Ford goes back up into the lead of this race, and that gap is only going to continue to build in the next 36 minutes. George Todd drops down to, as it would stand, then third place, with Wright rolling around here, still playing for that late strategy. He's going to cross up into, by looks of things, third place for the time being. You also see in the background there, David Tanguay moving to fourth place in this race, up and ahead of George Todd. Now emerges fifth on track. Sergio Belda now into the pit lane. So this is sort of rolling out the red carpet for the arrival of Richard Cecil back to the race lead. We see coming into the pits alongside him appears to be that of, looking here, the number 39. That's Christophe Dupois. The reason why we always get these three Lexus cars mixed up is because they're all using the same livery. Kyle Jenkins stays out in his continued pursuit to Brooklyn Donkin in a possible fight for P7. There's also one going on here, Jonas Franca versus Everaldo dos Santos, just as we catch on with them. Franca's up and ahead in through turn 8, or turn 7 and 8, rolling up around. Yellow flags out, the 616 in trouble. That's Andrew Veldkamp off the exit of turn 1. We'll stay on board here with this fight between Jenkins and Donkin as it continues to develop. The hopes that they continue to fight into the next lap here. Watching on with the Ferrari of Kyle Jenkins rolling up through to turn 9. Now still, of course, has yet to see his second and last pit stop. Likely then to see it in the next 4 minutes. I'll leave you on board with these two. We'll be back in just a moment's time. Back in then with this fight for what has now been upgraded from 7th to 6th on the grid after recent pit stops from the cars behind. Kyle Jenkins still pursuing Brooklyn Donkin, but of course strategy will play its hand as and when he arrives to the pit lane. In terms of things for the AM cars, with all of the leaders now having taken their pit stops, Richard Cecil leads over Everaldo dos Santos and Sergio Belda for the podium so far. Behind them, on his first ever appearance to this grid then, is that of Cedric Grenier Massey in the number 6. Giving it absolutely everything he's got here in this fight. In spite of the difference in strategy, Kyle Jenkins fighting with Brooklyn Donkin. Not their first time fighting on track together. 5-Star Esports versus Euro Titans down through towards turn 10. You see though for the Ferrari really starting to feel the pronounced effect of its longer stint on those tyres. And it is still definitely worth reporting here, even as we approach on that last 30 minutes of racing, that there is still, I would say, a pretty decent chance of there being rain. We've got the weather reports in front of us here for at least the next 30 minutes beforehand. We're waiting though for the next 2 minutes to roll around. If that's not the case, then of course we are going to be seeing a dry race, but one that is quickly descending in terms of its visibility. I mean, the amount of fog rolling in here, you'd believe it at first sight, but if the data tells us otherwise, the data tells us otherwise. Gunning a lot of this by eye because we don't get a full weather report. We only get the next 30 or so minutes, and that I believe refreshes every 10 or so. We'll just quickly wait to see, though. Still watching with this fight between Kyle Jenkins and Brooklyn Donkin. 6th place up for grabs. Ultimately will be for naught here for Jenkins, as he will still need to come into the pit lane for his last of 2 stops today. That's likely to come up in the next 2 minutes at around the 30-minute mark. Into the pit lane a moment ago, we did see another driver in. Let's go to catch on board with who it is. I believe it's Cohen Kendi in the 199. Yes, he is into the pit lane. So too is JM Keto. Now 22 laps down, it's very likely to assume that he is out of this race, as now a 3rd DNF emerges. We also see here Tanguay versus Wright, and it's a peculiar one when you consider, much like we see in the case of Jenkins v Donkin, albeit flipped on its head, Wright still has yet to have taken his last pit stop, likely also waiting, like Jenkins, for the last 30 minutes to roll around. Down through Rauch in towards turn 7. Behind them, you can see there is the number 616 of Andrew Veldkamp. Up and around turn 8. I believe they're now looking for the inside for his run into the pit lane. Wright versus Tanguay looks to come to a close here at turn 9. The Bentley rolls around the outside, and the 54, as it would appear, is now coming in to the pit lane with 30 minutes left to go. Barreling around to the run of the pits there. Hopefully not too fast. He's done that very, very closely. Nice, neat and tidy, though, for the 54. In terms of that remaining fight right now between Donkin and Jenkins, Jenkins now into the pit lane. The last piece in the puzzle in terms of strategy today finally falls into the pit lane as it is getting increasingly dark now. We get our final weather report, and no, there will not be any chances of rain, though it did give us a very big fright to see the fog rolling in over the course of today's race. However, with the last driver into the paddock, it does leave us with a sense of almost a sense of longing here for another fight on this field, because it is a fairly distant state of affairs on round 5's grid. 4.7 seconds between Donkin and Wright. There could be, in the next 29 minutes, the chance of a potential fight for 5th, and we'll watch that space for any future updates from those two. In terms of nearby fights, there is far and few between. We see two drivers side by side here, but not for the fight of position, just simply to get up and around one another. Ben Cheeseman and Christophe Dupois down through to turn 3. See behind them in 16th place on a separate length of the race there is Karina Stinson in the number 800. Not far away for a time was the 96 Casey Malles, where we got to see two generations of Aston Martin Vantage share the same stretch of tarmac. Looking in here, Kyle Jenkins about 2.5 seconds from Sergio Belda. And what we saw up in front there was a very close state of affairs down through Schlossgold. Getting a look on here is the number 35, close behind Kyle Jenkins, but of course not in a fight for position. Now, there is one to consider here. Jonas Franke versus Everaldo dos Santos. Less than 2 seconds between these two. George Todd intercepting from behind. Blue flags out at the moment for the 413. You see they're moving over to make things a little easier on the pass here for the Ferrari, getting up and around him. Wright versus Donkin shows little traction here to get too soon into a fight for 5th place. Seeing here with Brooklyn Donkin on his run down through turn 10. 27 minutes left to go here in the Red Bull Ring. Meanwhile, Jenkins v Belda is starting to gain a bit of steam here. We might go and catch on board here with the 113. We do just quickly see from George Todd, having got up and ahead of Jonas Franke, now sets his sights upon Everaldo dos Santos. Now that 413 is going to try and hold on for dear life behind the Ferrari, sort of pave the road forward to a chance to challenge for 8th place on this grid. We'll stay on board with Kyle Jenkins, who's looking to fashion himself up for a top 10. Up in front of him there, you can see The number 65, the white and green Ford, Sergio Belda with Holkianos Motorsports, 1.7 seconds up the road from the 113. "26 minutes left to go in this race. Sparks flying up on the exit of turn 10. You can really see how dark and gloomy it's starting to become here. 8:40 p.m. local time here in Spielberg. The sun's starting to set and fog rolling in. It's a very spooky state of affairs we're seeing here at the Red Bull Ring. .4 seconds in closing on the run into Remus. Very late on the brakes. He's done that very well so far in the 113. Pit window shuts in 10 minutes coming up on there. 10 minutes 15 seconds to be more precise. As things continue to build. Now dropping to within a second. We are now firmly in the fight for 10th place. We'll stay on board with Jenkins and Belda as they continue to gain ground between one another. You see here gaining significant grounds now, forced right up to the back end, down through Remus on Sergio Belda. Kyle Jenkins now firmly in the throes of a fight for the last of the top 10 positions on the run down towards turn 4 at Schlossgold. You see peeling out of the way there, possibly not by his own volition, as it looked like to be a very violent step out on the rear axle from turn 7 into turn 8. Belda drops in behind, but stays the course of his current position in category. As things would stand at the moment, Belda's still on for a podium. In terms of more nearby fights, there is still one progressing here, Francovidos Santos, between 9th and 8th place. Of course, like we saw for Jenkins v Belda, this is one that isn't really going to tread too much on the toes of their division standings, as these are two drivers from two different categories in this race. Gaining significant grounds here. Franca still looking for his chances up to move into 8th place. For Dos Santos finds themselves at significant distance here from Richard Cecil at the forefront of the AM division in this race. We see holding the inside once again is Coin Kendi. Last time didn't end up so well. That was in the early stages of today's race. In the last 21.5 minutes coming up on here, we find the newest fight emerging from two different categories, but still for a position on track of 8th place. Out through turn 1 at Niki Lauda curve. Porsche versus McLaren. Coming up and around as we see the McLaren peels out of the way there to allow Jonas Franke all the way to the outside, up through turn 2. That would be technically the inside. That was nice, neat and tidy. Much as the case there, getting out of the way, doesn't really want to fight for too long with another driver if it's not going to benefit him in terms of his category standings. That's what the priority for a lot of these AMs are when it comes to going toe-to-toe with the pro drivers. You see down the field there, side-by-side action is getting up and around. Is, I believe there, George Todd up over Karina Stinson, down through turn 1. You see the trailing end of the Dos Santos v Franca fight. Dos Santos plays things tactically to stay in the slipstream then of Jonas Franca in the hopes that it will help build more of a gap up towards Richard Cecil at the front of the field, but albeit he is about a quarter of the track away as things stand at the moment, actually closer to maybe about a half of the track away from Dos Santos at this time. 25.6 seconds from Jonas Franca in 8th place. Richard Cecil has had confident command of the AM grid here as we drop into the last 20 minutes of racing. Getting a look at where the grid stands then before we drop in with a few more drivers before the end of today's races. There is a rapidly progressing gap here between Donkin and Wright that we want to get on board with as soon as possible. Christian Lebay leads in this race over Zalan Such in 2nd place on his return to the series, and David Tanguay marks 3rd with Bentley. George Todd in 4th with Ferrari, and Brooklyn Donkin in 5th. Close behind and approaching by 1.5 seconds out is Wright in 6th place. Richard Cecil mans the front of the field for the AMs and makes 7th overall. Everaldo Dos Santos is now back up and ahead of Jonas Franca after what appeared to have been an incident down here at turn 7. The 413 back down to 9th. Kyle Jenkins recently up to 10th ahead of Sergio Belda, who marks the last of the podium positions for the AMs. He's 11th overall, ahead of that of the new driver on the block here with Cedric Grenier-Masse in the number 6. We do see a bit of argy-bargy there on the run down through Schlossgold up in front for one of the other BMWs, I believe. They're up along with the 119 at the lead of this race. Down through to Rauch at turn 6. See, tucked in behind there was Brooklyn Donkin, and as it would appear is that of the 54 of Wright. Bringing ever closer the prospect for him to fight with Donkin, so we'll stay on board with these two. Further down from outside of the top 12 then, Cheeseman in 13th, Potvin 14th, Sanchez 15th, Stinson in 16th, as we see looking for the inside here, right over Donkin, down through to turn 9 at Rin. Belkamp 17th, Badensky in 18th, Dupois 19th, Miles in 20th, Kendi in 21st, and 3 DNFs in this race. Let's go to catch on board though here with this very, very new fight going on between Brooklyn Donkin and Wright for 5th place. Following on with the defending of 2, Brooklyn Donkin fighting away 5th place off of Wright in the 54 Lexus behind. Looking for the inside there, Wright getting very elbows out on his approach to the number 17. Couldn't find any ground for it though. Just a little too narrow on the run up through turn 3 at Remus. Meanwhile, in the pit lane comes the number 91. I believe that's Ivan Sanchez into the pit lane. Now 2 of the 3 Holciano's cars in the paddock with 17 minutes left to go. We are 2 minutes out from the closure of the pit window. And as nighttime begins to roll in here, 8:49 p.m. local, the lights have come on for the cars as we approach the last quarter hour of racing here. Zalan Such now in between, and it's very difficult here when you don't have the foresight of seeing the pink wheels on Zalan Such's Lexus to tell him apart from the 54 behind. That being Wright down in 6th place. Donkin will eventually have to try and move out of the way here, knowing the gap is actually getting significantly closer between Such and Lebay. We could very well be on in the last quarter hour of a fight for the race lead. There is definitely the pace to prove it from the 45, heading down into lap 68 here at the Red Bull Ring. And for these two, Labey and Such will be the case of lap 69 as they're a lap ahead. That actually could be lap 70 as we consider having gotten up ahead again here of Brooklyn Donkin. A clear line of sight of one Lexus in front of him, but it's the Lexus behind. He ought to worry about that being right in the number 54, heading up through to Remus. We've seen from Donkin's point of view, but let's go and catch on board here with Wright in the attacking angle of this fight going on for fifth place, I should say. Watching from sixth. There's a bit of a run out wide from turn 7 and 8. Forces Wright nearly a full second out from Donkin as we run in towards the last two corners on track. 15 minutes left to go, and the pit window has been slammed shut. The point of no return then, strategy-wise, but we've seen from everyone on the grid, they've taken their 2 mandatory pit stops. Lights firmly on now for the 54 Lexus as he knuckles down here into a full pursuit. We see Ivan Sanchez, I believe, taking the emergency runoff. He's done actually quite well. That's really good attention to detail there in terms of the safety on track on the number 91. Leave you on board with Wright v Donkin. We'll be back to you in just a moment's time. Still on board as it stands then with Wright versus Donkin, and they run up through turn 1 now into turn 2. Remus corner looms around the corner here. Out of turn 2 into turn 3 we go. Just under 13 minutes left in round 5 of the World Series by Competizione Performance League. 0.4 of a second here between Wright and Donkin. Donkin having a fantastic drive here in the Red Bull Ring today. Heading up through Schlossgold. Now taking a look in here for Brooklyn Donkin, if he's able to finish in 5th, he will equalise on his best result of the season. That was in the second of 3 races at Silverstone to mark the first round of the championship, in which he also finished in 5th place. This will also represent for Brooklyn Donkin at this time his first top 5 appearance in 4 rounds, with his last top 5 being in the aforementioned second race of round 1. "12 minutes just under left to go in this race. We've also got word away from the lead of the field. There is now nothing left standing in between the 45 and the 119. They find themselves, as it stands, about, looking here, 3.8 seconds apart from one another, with just over 10 minutes left to go. 11 and a half to be specific. Following in towards turn 3 at Remus, and you notice with a lot of drivers here sticking really far out over the lines as it would stand on the run in towards turn 3. They're able to do that somehow, and it gives them this fantastic run of things through Remus. But ultimately, as has been a real talking point over the last couple of weeks, that turbocharged BMW engine, especially when verticality comes into consideration, is doing quite a heavy favour here for Brooklyn Donkin to keep him away from the naturally aspirated Lexus. Down through to turn 7 at Verth, up through to turn 8, in an area that has seen routine struggle by quite a few over the course of this race. I'll run down towards turn 9 and 10. 10.5 minutes left to go for these two. Looking in the ballpark here, doing some rough maths. It's going to be somewhere in the range of about 8, maybe 7 laps before the end of this race. If they're lucky, I'd say we're looking possibly closer to 6. Of course, all of that is still decided by the race lead, the 119, having crossed the line some time before these two in their fight for 5th. The feral sound of that 5.4 litre under the bonnet of the Lexus RCF. Right, looking originally, we saw the idea for it to go up the inside here on Donkin. Donkin covered it off, so he had to go back onto the racing line, hooking far out to the left before the run into Schlossgold here at turn 4, out through to turn 5, now turn 6 at Rauch. Down through to turn 7 at Worth, then turn 8. Both of them dipping their wheels there onto the grass on the inside. You can see with the Lexus pitching in slightly over where it ought to be turned. The back end very lively on the RCF in this current setup. We've seen that's created quite a few stability concerns for Lexus, but so far it's given them a very competitive run of things at the Red Bull Ring. Case in point was the lead of that race being in the hands of Zalan Such for quite some time, leveraging a brilliant start also with the Lexus RCF. Looking elsewhere on track to see any of the other fights currently ongoing, as this is one among the closest on the grid right now. The nearest would have been a fight between Jonas Franke and, looking here, Everaldo dos Santos. But as it would appear, they're 1.2 seconds out, nowhere near the distance we're seeing measured in between the 54 and the 17, as they once again go side by side down through to Remus at turn 3. On the run uphill, though, that BMW, again, twin turbos, just doing mighty, mighty work to keep the Lexus at arm's length. On the run up through sector 2. Quickly dipping in to see, you can see that gap is far greater between those two than what we're seeing here between Donkin and Wright. Was that contact? No, very close to it though, off the exit of Schlossgold. 8 minutes left to go in this race. We've got a catch on board here with the defending half of this fight. We've watched on for quite a fair distance here with Wright, the attacking angle of this, but now watching on with the car leading this fight for 5th place, the BMW of Brooklyn Donkin. Watching on board with him as he makes his way around this track. Very tricky section to handle here on the BMW. Very sharp front end on that car, can kick the back end out very easily. That's been the same story for the Lexus behind. Creeping in just past the, well, very hard to see, albeit, but past the roll bars and the rear windscreen. The BMW, you can see the sight of the Lexus RCF of Wright in the 54, still on the tail here of Brooklyn Donkin. He holds centre mass of the road to go up through Remus once again. And so far, this has been the winning strategy for defence by the number 17. There's only so many times he can run that move without there being a counter strategy formed up here by Wright. He's got all the way up onto the left-hand side here of the BMW. Now looking to hook this in for a very late apex. Donkin parks the bus on the apex and snips all of that momentum away from Wright. Heading up through to Rauch, or I suppose more relevantly down through to Rauch, as we begin the descent downhill. Out through to turn 7 and 8. Among the final fights of today's grid, rolling down through to turn 9 and 10. 6 minutes left to go. It's roughly, from the point of view of the 119, roughly about 5, maybe 6 laps left to go. Sorry, 3, maybe 4. Had to redo the maths just quickly there. 3, maybe 4 laps left to go. We'll really come to see it, though, from that 119, as the time is going to quickly tick down here for all but these two on track, because this is really the long walk to whether or not either of them see a top 5. For Donkin, he will equalise on his best result of the season, and it's a much needed top 5 given how the last couple of rounds have treated him over the course of this season. 12th in round 2 of the championship, 9th in round 3 in Imola, and a DNF in Watkins Glen. A top 5 is exactly what the doctor would have ordered for that number 17 given the last couple of weeks. This will be one he vehemently fights for in the closing 5 minutes here of round 5 of the championship to kickstart a good run into the second half of the season. Whilst we watch on with these two, getting a quick look to the road ahead onto where... Ooh, hang on a tick there, just as we brought the map up. What on earth happened for Wright? A big stab of oversteer. He had to correct it, very nearly put himself in the gravel. So that might very well be the signs... I bit my tongue there. The signs of fatigue that Donkin has been searching for out of Wright. And finally, he's got the advantage he's been seeking. 4.5 minutes left to go. The top 5 could be his to claim, but he's got to keep his head low and out of trouble between himself and the checkered flag. Only a few more laps left to go in round 5. Taking a look at where we'll be on the road ahead, we head to Spa for another 2-hour race at round 6. That'll be on April 25th, but getting into May, we see the first of our 3x40 races return, this time for the second half. He's second overall in this championship, first of the second half, round 7, Barcelona, with 3 40-minute races. That's 3 times the point-scoring opportunities. An absolute fire sale for these drivers on the run in to the end of the championship. Following on later down the line, we also see in the penultimate round of the season, another 3x40. We'll speak more of that, though, at the end of this race. Still with a story left to wrap up here. We're on board with Donkin and Wright, but getting a look further out to the rest of the field over any other fights building in to these last couple of laps. In terms of a gap that we've taken the time to observe on a few occasions, Jenkins versus Dos Santos. 1.6, just under 1.7 seconds as they round turn 10. 3.5 minutes left to go for the 119. Looks to be the case here. He'll cross on to his penultimate lap of racing here. So next one coming up after this one here will be the last lap of round 5 of the championship. Down to the line goes the 119. Across the line, 3 minutes 5 seconds left to go. So give or take there, I mean, it could really be a case where he comes down into that last lap and might very well, after, well, quote-unquote last lap, and have maybe actually a second or two, giving him a third lap here. In his position, it'd be a likely case that he ends up slowing down a bit to wrap the race up sooner, because with these drivers, they fuel the cars up very, very precisely. A single lap over can actually lead to the car running out of fuel. 2.5 minutes left to go then here in the Red Bull Ring. David Tanguay holds third for the time being, watching back in with Wright v Donkin. You can see the distance having formed up between the pair of them now, as their fight, brilliant as it has been so far, looks to be possibly coming to an end. It's 0.9 of a second out through Remus. We'll see. They've got one more lap to play with here at the Red Bull Ring. Watching for LeBay, he makes his way down through Rauch at turn 6. Down through to turn 7 and 8. Bear in mind, about 30-odd seconds here is going to dictate whether or not this lap coming up is the last of this race today. The 119 making his way down through to turn 9 and 10. Our calculations may be in vain here. Down through Red Bull Mobile Corner. When you consider that his lap times have been somewhere in the mid-130s all race. In fact, I believe the low 130s across the line he goes. And so it would be the case here for Christian LeBay that this is very likely to be not the last lap of the race. Now, that hopefully depends on whether or not he starts pumping the brakes here to maybe close this out a lap earlier than he'd like, so that he's not having to risk running out of fuel, as we know that is a prevalent case for many a driver on this grid. See for Wright, now using every last bit of willpower he has to continue to challenge Brooklyn Donkin for 5th in this race. A minute left to go, though there could be very likely for these two more laps on the horizon. We'll come to see, though, if that's the case. All of this will be dictated by that 119. George Todd's into the pit lane, so there's your fuel-related concerns rearing their heads here. When you consider that the pit lane is shut, he's up with very little support in that pit lane for him at the moment. So he's without a line, and this could very likely result in a DNF. If he's got no fuel and the team can't refuel him, he may very well be out of luck here. For Wright v Donkin, super close to one another as they round Schlossgold. Right, absolutely throwing the kitchen sink at that of Brooklyn Donkin as we see down to the line. Our calculations definitely do appear to be in vain as crossing the line there. Remarkable pace has put this now in the scope of the final lap. What we originally thought was going to be the final lap here and now has now just had one more added on top. These two, this has come at a very peculiar moment for them as they now will find themselves with that potential loss of fuel for George Todd. There's a likely case that they could be fighting for 4th, but right now they're fighting for 5th, and side by side into Niki Lauda curve. Very nearly went for it there. We'll go back on board with Brooklyn Donkin and Wright. We are in and amongst the final lap of racing here, so we'll be not long catching on board with the 119. Side by side, though, between Brooklyn Donkin and Wright on their way down through to Remus, going super long on the brakes of the 54, runs out wide. The 17 holds on to 5th place here. And this has been one of the most vigorously fought for 5th places we've seen all season between these two. Trying to get a look on board with the 119, who's not long from the line as we speak. Meanwhile, Donkin continues to hold his ground up over that of Wright. We'll be seeing them down to the line in a moment's time here. Catching on board, though, with the 119 of Christian LeBay, who looks to, as he rounds down through Rint Corner in towards Red Bull Mobile, finally lift the curse on what has been 2 rounds back-to-back without another race win. He collects on his 2nd race win of the season. The checkered flag flies here in the Red Bull Ring. Christian LeBay wins in Austria. A brilliant drive by him then, but we want to see how this all wraps up in the conversation of a few battles here. Among them, we see Stinson and Veldkamp to the line 15th and 16th, but where is Donkin and where is Wright? It could be a very close finish here between the pair, and that it is by a hair's width. Brooklyn Donkin in the top 5 after what has been a brilliant fight there with Wright in the closing half of today's race. The two finished 109 thousandths apart in what has been a brutal fight between the pair. Meanwhile, we see here for Richard Cecil, not far off of their trails at this time, making his way down towards the line, will collect on yet another victory then, his 4th this season in the AM category. A brilliant outing by Richard Cecil, righting the wrongs then of last week's debacle at the Watkins Glen International Circuit. Cecil back on top form in the AM category. Brilliant stuff from the number 5. We'll get a full look at the results in a moment's time then, but what a race that's come to be here at the midway of the Competizione Performance League World Series. Plenty of action, plenty of controversy. It couldn't be anywhere else but the Red Bull Ring we'd see such in this series. And a surprising number of close finishes, actually, right in the last couple of laps there. Grenier Masse and Cheeseman close, Stinson and Veldkamp close, and of course closest of them all, Donkin and Wright for 5th. All 1-3 across the line there. Jonas Franke last of the top 10 positions overall on the grid, but taking a look in through, LeBay wins in the Red Bull Ring for the pros. Cecil wins in the AMs. Looking further through the order, Such in 2nd, Tanguay 3rd, Todd 4th, Donkin 5th, Wright 6th. Cecil wins in division and 7th overall. Jenkins 8th, Dos Santos 9th, Franke 10th, Belder in 11th. Grenier Masse in 12th place, Cheeseman 13th, Potvin 14th, Stinson 15th, Veldkamp 16th, Sanchez 17th, Badensky in 18th, Dupois 19th, and Mals in 20th, just outside the top 20 there. Cohen Kendi in 21st. 3 DNFs from Pereira, Quito, and Skeen. In terms of your top 3 from both categories, Labey, Such, and Tangwe for the pros, and Cecil, Dos Santos, and Belder for the AMs. Brilliant stuff then here in the Red Bull Ring. We've got to quickly wrap up because not long from now, at around, looking here, it's actually going to be in about, looking there, that would be 28 minutes. We're going live with the folks over at Race Club UK for coverage of the 3rd and penultimate round of the Shooting Stars Cup. We go live from Brands Hatch in less than half an hour's time. So what a wonderful race that's been from the folks here of the Competizione Performance League World Series today. Taking a look at where we'll be next week on April 25th. We'll head to the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, home of the Belgian Grand Prix, as we get into the second half of Season 1 here of the World Series. What a fantastic race that's been. That's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night.